The moon has begun to forget its orbit. It still rises, still glows, still drapes the oceans in its silver pool. But deep inside the mathematics of the night, a small deviation has appeared, a breath out of place. Something once perfect has started to hesitate. For centuries, it circled us like a vow, an endless, patient repetition of love and gravity. Yet now the path bends slightly, as if memory itself had grown tired of being exact. You're listening to Whispers of the Universe, a quiet place where science drifts into sleep, and the stars remember what we forget. If you wish to keep this silence alive, a simple like, a share, or a quiet subscribe helps this voice travel a little further through the dark. Now, listen closely. This is the story of how the moon began to forget. In 1969, men stepped upon its dust and left mirrors to measure the distance between Earth and Moon. Those mirrors are still there, still returning light, and they whisper that the moon is drifting away, not fast, not even slow, but somewhere between a few centimeters each year, a farewell written in invisible ink. Each laser pulse that bounces home brings a truth softer than sorrow. The moon is leaving, 2 fingers every year, like a goodbye said too slowly to be heard. The numbers look calm, but behind them hides something intimate, a rhythm learning to skip, a memory bending. Somewhere in that shift, the ancient duet of Earth and Moon loses a note. Why would a satellite born from Earth's own wound choose to drift from the body that made it? Is this escape or evolution? Is the moon remembering a freedom older than gravity? Down in the dark water, tides still lift and fall, faithful to a master they cannot see. Each wave rises as if summoned, each retreat a gesture of obedience. But obedience is exhausting. Even water dreams of rest. On some nights, when the pull weakens, the tide seems to sigh before it returns. Perhaps the moon sighs too. Perhaps forgetting is not error but mercy, a quiet rebellion against the endless repetition of being. The physicists speak of energy exchanged through tides, a slow trade of momentum between Earth and Moon. The equations are elegant. They do not show the hesitation, the pause between steps, the silence before gravity catches its breath. Imagine an invisible rope, one body pulling, the other yielding, each bound by an affection too old to name. If gravity is a kind of memory, then every orbit is a promise kept. What happens when one side of the promise fades? Somewhere in the planet's core, liquid metal flows in restless currents. Earth trembles softly, its magnetic field swaying like a heartbeat. Every shift in that hidden ocean brushes the moon's path with a feathered hand. Perhaps Earth's own fatigue is what the moon has begun to feel. Perhaps it is not the moon forgetting us, but Earth changing its song. Can planets grow old? Can a world sigh after 4 billion years of spinning? If the planet's pulse slows, what happens to the hearts that depend on it? The oceans, the winds, the sleepers who measure night by moonlight. One night, an astronomer noticed a flicker. The echo from a lunar mirror returned a fraction of a beat, late. It wasn't error. It wasn't cloud. It was hesitation, as if the moon blinked a single blink in billions of revolutions. Sometimes that is all it takes for doubt to enter the sky. A single blink, and eternity stumbles. The scientists wrote the value down. The rest of us felt it. A quiet with texture filled the night. Dogs did not howl. The tide paused half a breath, then rose. The world missed one note of its lullaby. There are other tremors hidden in the cold. Seismometers left by human hands still hum faintly. They record moonquakes, tiny shivers in the crust, some born of heat, some of Earth's embrace. They sound like the ticking of a distant heart. Each tremor is a question. Do you still remember me? What if the orbit is a kind of breathing, and these deviations are sighs between breaths? When we measure motion, perhaps we are catching emotion, the sadness of a body that cannot rest. Science can describe the shift, but not the loneliness inside it. Loneliness has no unit, only echo. Even light seems to feel it. Moonlight once arrived clean and steady. Now it trembles through the atmosphere we have made. Dust, salt, satellites crossing the beam, small interferences blurring a quiet face. From the ground we call it shimmer. To the moon it might feel like static in memory. Each photon with a faint stutter. Each glimmer, a reminder that perfection has been touched. The moon still glows, but not for the same reasons. It glows to remember. Do you remember what you were circling once? A dream, a person, a thought? When you drifted from it, was it loss or liberation? Sometimes the path that loosens is the path that finally sings. Between midnight and dawn, the orbit continues, slightly altered, slightly shy. Mathematically, almost nothing. Emotionally, almost everything. If even the moon can forget, then certainty is an illusion. All stability is borrowed. All repetition is fragile. Maybe beauty lives not in precision but in the small hesitations between the tremor before the note, the quiver before the breath, the almost that keeps perfection alive. The moon will not crash. It will not vanish. It will keep moving a little farther, a little fainter, until our tides no longer reach its memory. Yet there is comfort in that. Forgetting is also freedom. When the orbit loosens, a new song begins, one neither Earth nor moon has ever sung. Gravity becomes music again, not obedience. Close your eyes. The moon is still turning, still circling something, maybe us, maybe itself. Listen. Can you hear it hesitate? That is not the sound of loss. That is the sound of beginning again. Somewhere inside a server room, in the pale hum of machines that never sleep, the moon is being watched. Not with eyes, not with longing, but with lasers, numbers, and patience, measured in years. Every night, a pulse of light leaves Earth, crosses the void, and returns in silence. No one hears it, yet it keeps speaking. Each return signal is a whisper of distance, a small truth arriving from the dark. The data looks ordinary columns of figures, decimals, timestamps, but inside those numbers, something is breathing. A rhythm, a hesitation, a secret almost too shy to be noticed. If you look long enough, the pattern begins to shift. The decimals lean, the lines of certainty curve, and a quiet story unfolds. The moon has begun to move differently. We used to believe that precision could protect us, that by measuring the world, we could keep it from changing. But the more we measure, the more alive it becomes. And the more alive it becomes, the less obedient it seems. Can a number dream? Can data remember what it once meant? Or does every record eventually outgrow the truth it was made to hold? Each photon that leaves the telescope travels with purpose: to touch, to return, to inform. But sometimes the return is faint, blurred by dust or wind, or simply late. And when it is late, the computers adjust. They smooth the deviation, hide the imperfection, because the system prefers silence to doubt. But doubt has its own kind of music. And tonight, the data sings slightly off-key. A scientist leans closer to the screen. She sees the curve. It's nothing, she tells herself. A calibration error, a temperature shift. But the mind notices what the logic denies. Something in her chest reacts before the equations do. That's how discovery begins, not in knowledge, but in discomfort. Every few years, the readings change by a hair's breadth, a movement smaller than memory. The moon slips farther, but not in a straight line. It wobbles, as if second-guessing its own trajectory. Sometimes it speeds slightly, as if startled by its own drift. Then it slows again, like someone caught walking in the wrong direction. We call it a perturbation, but what if it's a feeling? The machines don't ask, they only record. Data does not confess. Yet the gaps between the numbers widen, and in those gaps, silence collects like dust. Some nights, when the scientists leave, the servers keep humming in the dark, and if you could listen with more than ears, you might hear it a low murmur, almost like breathing. The moon doesn't send words, it sends timing. Every bounce of light carries a heartbeat, every delay, a sigh. We think we are measuring it, but it is measuring us back. It has been watching the lights of our cities spread, watching the oceans rise to meet them, watching our signals blur the stars. What does it see when it looks at us? A companion, a noise, a species that forgot how to listen. Long ago, the moon was closer. It pulled the tides higher, the nights darker, the shadows deeper. We were younger then, half in myth, half in wonder. Now we study instead of gaze. We turn awe into graphs. And yet, the closer we analyze, the stranger the familiar becomes. The moon's surface is mapped in exquisite detail, every crater, every scar. Still, we have never mapped its memory. Does it remember being part of Earth, torn from its body by collision and time? Does it recall the heat, the moment it became separate yet bound? If rocks can remember pressure, can orbits remember touch? In the archives of the observatories, rows of hard drives hold decades of observation, bits of light, stacked and compressed. They hum faintly, like ancient choral, each one holding a record of the same question asked differently. How far, how fast, how certain? But no one ever asks, how does it feel? Perhaps the question itself is unscientific, but it is also human. And the moon, being the mirror of our nights, seems to answer in our language of emotion. It delays, it hesitates, it forgets. What if forgetting is not decay, but adaptation? Every system, when tired, learns to rest in imperfection. The orbit, too, adjusts tiny corrections that mimic fatigue, shifts that resemble forgiveness. Maybe the moon is forgiving itself for the long centuries of obedience. Maybe gravity is not a law, but a lullaby, and the moon has begun to dream beyond its melody. The scientist looks again at her readings. The curve is real. She could write a paper about it, but papers have no soul. So she just watches the numbers breathe. Behind her, the night hums softly through the windows. Somewhere, a wave hits a distant shore, a sound delayed by seconds, echoing the delay in her data. She smiles, not because she understands, but because she doesn't. Sometimes, not knowing feels closer to truth. Each reflection from the moon travels 1.25 seconds each way. That delay is constant, except when it isn't. On certain nights, the pulse comes back later, as if the distance has expanded for reasons no math can name. The scientists say it's air density, temperature, solar wind, but could it also be something else? Could it be reluctance? Could space itself be hesitating? The light that travels those seconds returns to us changed. It left Earth pure, and came back colored by time, just like memories. They go out white and come back tinted by experience. Every reflection is a small version of growing old. When you stare at the data too long, you begin to see more than information. You see emotion disguised as noise. The moon's drift is not rebellion, but expression, a subtle confession made in physics. If we stopped treating it as anomaly and started listening as one listens to a sigh, what would it tell us? The late-night researchers call these tiny deviations anomalous returns. A beautiful phrase, isn't it? Anomalous returns, as if something went out, found something unspeakable, and came back changed. Isn't that what all journeys are. Perhaps the moon is not leaving us, it's learning what it means to return differently. A file on one of the drives is labeled 2035-6 Lunar Drift. Inside are millions of lines of numbers. Hidden among them, one value stands out. A signal that should have arrived at 2.512 seconds came at 2.514. A delay of 2 thousandths. To the machine, it's noise. To a human, it's heartbeat. She prints the data, holds the paper under her lamp. The numbers shimmer faintly in the warm light, as if breathing. She touches the page, and for a moment, it feels warm. In the silence of the observatory, everything seems to listen: the air, the cables, the glass domes above. The moon hangs outside, still and patient. The scientist whispers, "Do you remember?" The data answers with stillness. But in that stillness, she hears something new, not an absence, but a waiting. And suddenly she realizes, data doesn't speak in sound, it speaks in timing, in delay, in the gap between signal and response. It speaks in how long it takes to come home. If the moon's orbit is its voice, then these small changes are its inflections. Maybe it's learning to speak again, after eons of silence. Maybe forgetting its orbit is just another way of saying it wants to tell us something new. What if every deviation is a sentence we haven't learned to translate? Every pause a word from a language older than light? In this moment, the numbers on the screen are more than data, they're memory, in motion. Each decimal, a pulse of intention. Each line, a breath in the dark. And the human heart, watching, beats in rhythm with the unknown. For a second, the scientist feels the vastness of it, not fear, not awe, but kinship. The same gravity that holds the moon holds her hand steady. The same light that leaves her instrument returns to her eyes. The same silence that fills the cosmos waits quietly in her chest. Can the observer be part of what she observes? Can the watched and the watcher remember each other into being? If everything that looks also becomes what it sees, then maybe the moon is forgetting so that we might remember. The data keeps streaming, the night keeps breathing, and somewhere in that constant exchange, a small, fragile truth endures. Even silence records, even distance loves, even numbers dream of light. Close your eyes. You can almost hear the delay between here and there, a tiny pause, a hesitation shaped like hope. The moon hasn't stopped speaking. It's only learned to whisper through time. There is a rope that no one can see, a line of invisible tension drawn between the earth and its moon. It stretches, it trembles, it hums like the string of an ancient instrument. Every tide is the sound of that string being plucked. Every orbit, a slow vibration through the dark. We call it gravity. But gravity is only the polite name for something more intimate. It is the ache of belonging. It is the memory of collision that never healed. For 4 billion years, that pull has kept the two bodies bound, each circling the other in a dance so old it forgot its beginning. But lately, the music has changed. The notes no longer fall in the same places. There are pauses where there used to be certainty. The pull remains, yet the closeness fades. How can two things stay connected while growing apart? Can love exist at a distance greater than memory? The scientists describe it with precision: tidal friction, angular momentum, orbital resonance. But language can hide the trembling beneath knowledge. Every formula is a translation of longing. Every calculation hides the sound of something that doesn't want to let go. When the ocean rises toward the moon pulls back. That pull drags the seas slightly ahead of where they should be, and that small misalignment steals energy from the Earth's rotation. Day by day, the planet's spin slows by fractions of a heartbeat. Night by night, the moon climbs a little higher. The cost of the moon's freedom is the slowing of our days. The price of distance is time itself. What a quiet tragedy that is, to drift away in exchange for longer moments of light. Maybe that is how all separation begins. One body slows, the other escapes. One gives, the other becomes lighter. The old astronomers never knew this. They thought the moon was constant, the tides eternal. They did not imagine that the oceans were paying a debt. But the sea remembers what the sky forgets. In its waves, you can hear the story of surrender told over and over. Stand at the edge of the shore on a still night when the water is glass and the air doesn't move. Listen, you can almost feel the strain in the silence. Every ripple is a sigh that began billions of years ago. The earth is always reaching upward, and the moon is always just beyond reach. Is that not the purest form of love, to be forever pulled toward what you can never hold? Sometimes, late in winter, when the air is sharp and the sky perfectly still, the moon appears larger, nearer. It is an illusion. But illusions are also truths told differently. Our eyes want reunion even when physics denies it. We crave the nearness of what once was whole. Maybe that is why the human heart beats to imitate the push and pull that made us. If you could stand outside this orbit, if you could watch from some far corner of space, you would see two luminous bodies circling a shared center, neither truly still, neither truly free. Each movement of one alters the path of the other. This is not subservience, it is dialogue. The moon whispers, the earth answers. The rhythm between them is a conversation of tides. But every conversation, even the eternal, has interruptions. In certain epochs, the Earth's axis wobbles more sharply. Its tilt shifts by degrees, and the moon's orbit compensates. A partnership of correction. When one forgets, the other remembers. When one leans too far, the other pulls it back toward balance. Perhaps that is what love is. Not harmony, but correction. The willingness to pull and be pulled, to bend and be bent, so that both may remain in motion. Yet, lately, something in that dialogue has softened. The pulls are weaker, the corrections slower. The rope that once sang with tension now drapes like silk. It still holds, but lightly, as if afraid to wake the other. The earth spins a little less eager, the moon moves a little less certain. Two old dancers remembering steps they no longer need. Do you think they ever get tired of each other? 4 billion years of glances across a distance that never closes. 4 billion years of attraction without touch. Could eternity become weary? Could devotion become silence? Beneath the ocean, the coral listens. The tides sweep above it in familiar patterns. But even there, the rhythm is changing. Tiny creatures build their homes according to the pull of the moon, yet lately their timing is off. Spawning seasons drift by hours, then days. Nature's metronome is missing beats. The moon's hesitation ripples through every form of life. We sense it without knowing. We call it strange weather, unstable currents, shifting migrations. But maybe it is all the same message. The song has changed key. On the nights when the moon is full, its brightness spills across the clouds like milk. You can see shadows, even at midnight. It feels generous, but generosity can also be grief. Light can be a way of saying farewell. Perhaps the moon shines so fiercely because it wants us to remember its face when it finally drifts too far. There is a story told by ancient navigators that the sea follows the moon because once, long ago, the moon saved it from stillness. In those days the world was quiet, and the oceans slept. The moon, lonely in the sky, sang to them until they moved, and they have been answering ever since. Maybe that story isn't wrong. Maybe every wave is an echo of that first song. If that's true, what happens when the singer forgets the melody? The instruments that measure the moon's motion are precise, But precision has blind spots. They cannot record longing, they cannot graph fatigue. They show us motion, not meaning. And yet, every scientist who studies these figures feels the same unease. Something vast and patient is shifting. It doesn't hurry, it doesn't protest, it simply allows the distance to grow. To measure that distance is to measure our own fragility. We exist because of this balance, because of the delicate conversation between pull and release. If either side grows silent, everything that depends on rhythm begins to falter. The length of our days, the shape of our tides, even the tilt that grants us seasons, all are bound to that invisible rope. To watch it loosen is to glimpse the edge of our own memory. Sometimes, during eclipses, when Earth, Moon, and Sun align, the universe seems to pause. Shadows stack upon shadows, light bends through air that tastes metallic. For a few minutes, the rope feels taut again, as if remembering how it used to sing. People look up, hushed, feeling an emotion they can't name. We call it wonder, but it's older than that. It's the body recognizing its own orbit. When the shadow passes, the light returns, and we forget the feeling until the next time. Maybe forgetting is necessary. Maybe if we remembered the pull all the time, we would never be able to move. There is a phrase in orbital mechanics, mutual perturbation. It means two bodies influencing each other's motion. No orbit is ever purely one way. Every pull has an echo, every attraction a reply. The Earth tugs on the Moon, and the Moon tugs back. Neither wins, both change. Isn't that what every relationship becomes, a mutual perturbation, a sharing of deviation? The servers keep recording, the mirrors keep shining. The Moon continues to drift, its path a little more uncertain each decade. Still, the rope does not break. Perhaps it never will. Perhaps the secret of gravity is not that it holds things together, but that it allows them to leave without letting them go. When the last tides finally lose sync with the sky, when the seas no longer answer the call of that distant white eye, will we notice? Or will we already be asleep, rocked by some new rhythm, lulled by another pull between new worlds? Every bond in the cosmos ends this way, not with violence, but with distance. Not with silence, but with softer music. Even separation, it seems, is only another kind of orbit. Close your eyes. You can feel it even now, that invisible thread brushing through the air, that faint hum between your ribs. It's the same pull that moves oceans, the same sigh that keeps the Moon from flying away completely. We live inside that tension. We are made of it, and somewhere, in the slow rhythm between giving and letting go, the universe keeps breathing. The pull never truly ends. It leaves traces in the oceans that keep reaching for the sky, in the rivers that cannot stop moving toward the salt. Even when the Moon drifts farther, the water still remembers her touch. It moves, not because it is commanded, but because it cannot forget. After all, the ocean has always been a memory in motion. Each tide is a page turning itself. Each wave, a sentence written by gravity's invisible hand. The Moon may forget its orbit, but the sea refuses to forget the Moon. When the world sleeps, the ocean still moves. It rises toward what is gone, falls back into what remains, then rises again. This is how memory behaves when the mind cannot rest. It repeats itself, hoping repetition will bring the lost thing closer. The fishermen of old could tell the Moon's mood by watching the tide. They said the water spoke before the sky did. On certain nights, when the current stalled, they knew the Moon was troubled. They did not call it science, they called it listening. In the silence after midnight, the tide presses against the rocks, pauses, and exhales. The sound is gentle, but it carries weight, like someone whispering a name into a dream. What name does the sea whisper now? Is it the moon's or our own? From the shore, it seems simple. The moon pulls, the ocean answers. But inside that call and response is an orchestra of forces. Currents twist. Under pressure, temperature sculpts motion, and the shape of continents turns the song into 1,000 dialects. Every bay, every cove, translates the moon's language differently. Yet, beneath those variations, the same rhythm persists, a pulse older than bone. They do not see the moon, but they feel it. Their bodies know when to move. Their blood hums to a beat set billions of years ago. Even darkness remembers light when rhythm remains. The link between sea and sky is not made of distance. It is made of obedience. But what happens when obedience outlives command? When the one who calls begins to fade, does the listener fall silent? Or does it keep speaking, repeating the last words it heard forever? Perhaps this is what is happening now. The moon's pull weakens, but the ocean continues to rise and fall, a faithful servant, long after the king has forgotten the throne. Maybe devotion, like gravity, survives its origin. Scientists measure these movements with cold precision. They trace every swell, every retreat. They mark the centimeters of difference, the seconds between peaks. But no chart can explain why some waves reach farther than they should, why some nights the water lingers at the shore as if reluctant to leave. Could it be that even matter hesitates when faced with absence? It is tempting to think of water as simple, but water keeps secrets better than stone. It carries memory, not in form, but in rhythm. The molecules remember every encounter, every temperature, every whisper of wind. They shift, they break, they join again, but the pattern stays. The ocean is a mind without language, and tonight, that mind is restless. On nights when the moon hides behind cloud, the sea still breathes in perfect time. It does not need to see its maker. Faith, after all, is the continuation of rhythm when the conductor is gone. Is that what the universe asks of us too, to keep moving even when light withdraws? The coral reefs bloom and fade with the lunar calendar. They build their cities of calcium by counting the days of reflection. When the moon's light arrives half a second later than it used to, their clocks falter. Eggs drift in currents that no longer match the moon's command. Tiny misalignments ripple outward, and the rhythm of life stutters. What began as a fraction of distance becomes a chorus of confusion. Even the smallest change in gravity's whisper can rewrite the choreography of oceans. Yet the sea adapts. It always has. When the continents split, the tides learned new shores. When the ice melted, the currents carved new paths. Perhaps adaptation is its form of remembering to change just enough so that continuity survives. Maybe forgetting, in the language of water, is simply learning to flow differently. Stand by the water again. The waves reach your ankles, then withdraw. Each one a pulse from the moon's fading memory. You can feel it more than see it, that subtle insistence, that slow argument between pull and surrender. Why does it comfort us so? Why do we sleep best beside something that never stops moving? A child once asked why the ocean follows the moon. Her father said, "Because it loves her." She frowned. "Does she love it back?" The father looked at the sky for a long time before answering. "She used to." Love stories end this way everywhere in the cosmos. Not with anger, but with drift. Not with silence, but with echoes that refuse to fade. If you listen long enough, you realize echoes are the true memories. They last longer than the voices that made them. The same is true for tides. They are not water moving. They are time repeating itself. Every wave is a reminder of a moment already past. Every retreat is an acknowledgement of what cannot be held. The shoreline wears these reminders into its body: smooth stones, rounded shells, each shaped by patience and surrender. The earth is sculpted by longing. The moon still watches, though its attention drifts. Sometimes it hides behind shadow, as if embarrassed by the persistence of its own influence. The ocean, faithful as ever, does not seem to mind. It continues to bow, to reach, to return. How long can memory move without its source? How long before the rhythm dissolves into stillness? In the years to come, when the moon has wandered a little farther, the tides will shrink, the oceans will rest more, storms will quiet. But the silence will not be peace, it will be nostalgia, a stillness shaped like a missing heartbeat. Future generations may never know how alive the sea once was under a closer moon. They will look at calm waters and call them safe. They will not know that calm is only memory forgetting to move. Yet there is hope even in fading. The ocean has never feared change. It only learns new ways to echo. As the pull weakens, its surface will find subtler rhythms, smaller ripples that hum instead of crash, currents that move like breathing in meditation. Maybe this is evolution, not loss. Maybe the sea is preparing for a gentler dialogue with gravity, a softer kind of song. Everything in nature learns to transform longing into form. Leaves bend toward light. Mountains exhale rivers. The earth itself once reached for the moon, and the moon was born. Perhaps the ocean is doing the same, reaching for a new way to remember. Because to move, even after abandonment, is to still be in love. As dawn approaches, the color of the waves changes. They turn pale gold, as if sunlight and moonlight were sharing the same breath. For a brief moment, day and night blur, and it feels as though the ocean and the moon have found each other again. That meeting is an illusion, but illusions are how reality comforts itself. It is enough to believe they touch, even if only through reflection. The tide begins to retreat for the last time before sunrise. The sound is almost human, a sigh stretched across centuries. What will the ocean do when it finally stops answering? What will we do when the rhythm that shaped our sleep goes silent? Maybe another tide will rise somewhere else. Maybe the forgetting of one world is the remembering of another. Close your eyes and listen once more. The water still moves, but no longer waits for the moon. It moves for itself now, carrying within it every pull it ever obeyed. And in that quiet independence, something ancient awakens, a rhythm that belongs to no master. The tides have not stopped remembering. They have simply learned to remember differently. Morning comes slowly after a night of heavy tide. The sea still glistens from the moon's touch, yet the light feels different, as if something in it has been rearranged. It used to fall in straight lines, soft and predictable. Now it flickers at the edges. A trembling the human eye barely notices, but the soul feels immediately. Light should not tremble. It travels the same path, at the same speed, obeying the same laws that have ruled it since the first dawn. Yet sometimes even laws seem to pause, as though remembering they were written by something living. What happens when light, the purest messenger in the universe, hesitates? The change began quietly, not in the sky, but in the mirrors left behind. Those instruments, waiting on the dusty plains of the moon, returned beams softer than before. The photons came home, but they carried with them a kind of fatigue, as if the journey between worlds had become heavier. Scientists blamed dust, temperature, solar interference. But what if the cause lies deeper in intention, not condition? Between Earth and Moon, space is not empty. It is filled with the breath of everything that has ever happened. Radiation, particles, whispers of ancient explosions. Each beam of light passes through this crowded silence. Maybe the hesitation comes from listening. Maybe the light slows for a heartbeat to remember where it has been. Last night the moon rose pale and uncertain. Its face looked veiled, a thin film of haze blurring the edges. The color leaned toward gold, not silver, as though sunlight had touched it too soon. People called it beautiful, but beauty often hides imbalance. Even the camera sensors saw the change. The histogram leaned warmer, the pixels sighed with color never meant for them. The image looked alive, but life always costs energy. Somewhere, inside an observatory on the Andes, a man sat staring at that color shift. He had seen thousands of moons, but never this one. He wrote in his notebook, "The light hesitated tonight." He could not explain what that meant, so he simply underlined the word twice. That was enough. Because sometimes, noticing is an act of faith. Light leaves a record of its hesitation. It bends through air, through heat, through memory. Atmospheric scattering, dust, humidity, all are excuses the earth offers for what it does not want to confess. The truth is, the atmosphere has changed, and light can feel it. The molecules that used to greet it, like friends, now shimmer with uncertainty. They refract differently, as though unsure how to host such fragile guests. So the beams split, wander. By the time they reach our eyes, they have already lived 1,000 small departures. Still, they try to remain whole. That is why moonlight looks softer now, because it is broken and trying not to show it. It spreads its brightness evenly, as if humility could disguise fracture. Can you see it? That faint halo around the edges of the moon. The way it hums, instead of shines. It is light, remembering how to hold itself together. The astronomers call these halos lunar coronae. Tiny ice crystals drift high in the stratosphere, bending the rays, scattering them into rings. But explanation does not cancel wonder. In every ring there is an echo of the first light that touched the moon when Earth was still molten and the sky still red. Perhaps these halos are fossils of that first fire, reminders that even radiance was once molten and lost. Light behaves according to truth, but it also behaves according to mood. The stars prove it. They flicker not because of themselves, but because the air around us trembles. Everything that shines is shaped by what it passes through. So maybe the moon's new shimmer is simply the reflection of our own unrest. We have filled the night with signals, a forest of invisible noise. The light returns confused, unsure which pulse belongs to us, which silence belongs to the dying. Dark. In the city, street lamps blur the edges of night. Moonlight no longer rules alone. It competes, it negotiates. Sometimes, when the power fails and the streets go dark, people notice how bright the moon really is. That is when they realize the sky has been patient with our distractions. We have been drowning its tenderness in electricity. Still it waits, still it glows, still it forgives. Once, when electricity had not yet learned to hum, people measured time by the fullness of the moon. Farmers, sailors, lovers, each one trusted light as if it were intention. Now we measure by clocks that do not care for the sky. We replaced reflection with precision, wonder with prediction. But precision is sterile, and prediction cannot sing. Only reflection remembers how to whisper. Light misbehaves when memory wakes. You can see it in old photographs' faded corners, colors that bleed into one another, moments refusing to stay still. Maybe the moon is becoming a photograph in motion, its image overexposed by time. Maybe the camera of the universe is blinking. Between frames, something extraordinary happens. The world disappears for the briefest instant, then returns changed. That gap between appearances, that's where the moon lives now. Neither lost nor found, just mid-blink. What if the entire cosmos blinks this way, every atom closing its eyes for a fraction of eternity, then opening them again to new coordinates? If so, the The moon's hesitation is not error, it is participation, a heartbeat shared with stars. Every telescope that looks up is really looking inward. When we see the moon flicker, we are watching our own stability tremble. The instruments record data, but behind every graph is a human breath, the quiet awe of being witnessed by what we observe. Light enters the eye, and the eye changes to meet it. Every gaze is collaboration. Perhaps that is why the moon flickers now, because we keep staring, and attention itself bends the beam. In quantum laboratories, photons behave differently when observed. They choose paths as if shy. Observation collapses possibility into certainty, but certainty is the beginning of decay. So the moon's light, caught between our endless cameras and sensors, has started to protect itself. It hides behind haze, behind speed, behind the gentle blur of humility. It is not vanishing, it is guarding its privacy. Even radiance needs rest from being seen. Sometimes, when you look long enough, the moon seems to breathe. It brightens, then dims, as if inhaling and exhaling light. Scientists call it atmospheric pulsing. But what if it is conversation? What if the moon is answering the oceans, echoing the rhythm of tides with a rhythm of brightness? If the tides remember touch, then light remembers presence. Together they form a dialogue, water answering shine, shine answering movement. A cycle of recognition, older than thought. Last night, the light trembled again, but this time it lingered longer before settling. The air shimmered around the moon, like heat above desert sand. For a moment, it looked alive, not the cold disk of rock we imagine, but a breathing, luminous creature turning in its sleep. Maybe that's what it has always been, not an object, but an awareness, drifting between glow and forgetting. What does it dream about, this pale witness of our nights? Does it see itself reflected in every wave, in every eye that looks upward? Does it know that its own light is borrowed, a gift from a sun it will never touch again? The moon lives on reflected memory, and perhaps that is why it trembles, because memory, too, depends on another's warmth. When light misbehaves, it teaches us about dependence. Nothing shines alone. Every brightness carries a debt. Even the stars, burning in isolation, shine with fuel given by the death of others. The universe is a chain of borrowed flames, each one passing the torch to the next. The moon's borrowed glow is simply being honest about the fatigue of inheritance. To flicker is to admit that light, too, needs to rest. At the edge of dawn, the moon sinks low, its brightness diluted by the new Sunday. The last beams scatter through mist, stretching long shadows that waver like memory trying to hold shape. Then the light softens, and the moon fades from view. But even in disappearance, its presence lingers, a ghost of luminance folded into daylight. You can feel it in the skin rather than see it, a faint pressure behind the warmth. Light never truly leaves, it only changes residence. Perhaps that is what forgetting looks like to the cosmos, not erasure, but transformation. The moon's hesitations, the ocean's sighs, the drifting of orbit and brightness, all are ways of remembering differently. The universe does not hold its memories in words, it holds them in light, in movement, in the shimmer that refuses to stay still. Tonight the moon will rise again. Its light will tremble again. And we will watch, pretending to measure, but really just listening. Because somewhere in that hesitation, in that barely noticeable misbehavior, is the most human thing in the sky, a longing to keep shining, even while learning how to change. Close your eyes. You can still see it, a soft pulse behind your eyelids, a silver heartbeat refusing darkness. That is the moon's light. Still misbehaving, still alive, still remembering what it means to be seen. When light leaves the moon, it carries with it what cannot be spoken. But when light arrives there, it leaves something behind. Every photon that strikes its dust becomes part of a silent archive. Each grain holds a story of contact, a faint echo pressed into stone. The surface of the moon is older than memory itself. Nothing grows there, nothing heals. Every footprint, every impact, remains exactly where it landed. To walk on the moon is to walk on the fossil of time. The dust does not forget. It keeps the shape of every step, as though the ground itself listens to whoever dares to cross it. Even now, half a century after human boots last touched that dust, the prints are still there, waiting under the same sun, the same endless silence. Wind cannot erase them, for there is no wind. Water cannot wash them, for there is no sea. Only sunlight and shadow take turns remembering, and in their rhythm, the surface has learned patience, a patience older than forgiveness. The rocks brought back to Earth weigh almost nothing in your hands. Yet they contain billions of years of unbroken solitude. They smell faintly of metal and memory. Some still hold the signature of cosmic rays, tiny scars from particles that have traveled across galaxies. Every mark is a letter in the language of endurance. When scientists split them open, they hear the faintest whisper of radiation escaping, a sigh that took millennia to reach the air. Perhaps that sigh is the sound of the moon remembering itself. Deep in laboratory vaults, behind glass thicker than faith, those rocks rest in darkness. Labels fade, but the stones do not. They seem asleep, but they are not. Inside their crystal lattices, atoms shift slowly, as if breathing once every century. Nothing in them is truly still. Even silence has movement when you wait long enough. There is one fragment so small it looks like dust under a microscope. It contains a trapped bubble of gas, a miniature sky sealed before Earth had oceans. When the bubble was opened for study, the gas escaped with a sound like exhalation. It had waited 4 billion years to breathe again. What else might it have said if we could hear beyond pressure and wavelength? Maybe it would have told us how light feels when it becomes matter. Maybe it would have told us that even stones dream of release. Every rock on the moon came from violence. Impact after impact, meteor upon meteor. Each collision carving another page into the gray. Creation by destruction, that is the moon's first memory. It has never known peace, only endurance. It learned to glow from trauma, and to stay silent because silence is what survives explosions. Is that not what humans do? To turn pain into radiance, and radiance into calm. When astronauts first picked up those rocks, they expected weight and found story instead. Their gloves gathered dust that clung like thought. When they returned home, the dust followed, sticking to suits, to skin, as if the moon did not want to be left behind. Even after decontamination, tiny particles lingered, lodged in fabric seams, in hair, in the folds of memory. It was as though the moon wanted to travel, to be remembered through the bodies that had touched it. Years later, when those astronauts grew old, they described dreams of walking there again. Not dreams of discovery, but of stillness, the sound of their own hearts echoing inside their helmets. The feeling of being weightless yet anchored by awe. Each said the same thing in different words. They missed the silence. They had brought back stones, but left behind something softer, their own certainty. In museums, those grey fragments rest under sterile light. Visitors peer through glass, their reflections mingling with lunar dust. Children press their faces close, expecting wonder, seeing only grey. But wonder hides well. It lives in the faint gleam at the edge of the rock, where 1 billion years of sunlight hardened into stillness. If you look long enough, you'll see the shimmer move, as if the stone is remembering being bright. Every atom inside those rocks vibrates. Quantum motion, scientists call it. To me, it sounds like thought. Each vibration an echo of forces too ancient to name. The stones are not inert. They are patient. They listen to gravity, to radiation, to our curiosity. And maybe, in their own language, they answer. There's a legend told by engineers who handled lunar samples. One night, during a blackout, the security cameras caught a faint luminescence from within the vault. No one could explain it. When the lights returned, the glow vanished. They said it was phosphorescence, the slow release of stored energy. What if every solid thing is a photograph taken by time? In that case, the moon's surface is the oldest film reel in existence, a record of every collision, every eclipse, every stare. When you look at it through a telescope, you are watching time project itself onto the present. And the rocks, resting here on Earth, are the fragments of that endless screening. In a quiet corner of the lunar archive, there is one rock, unlike the others, an orthosite, pale and veined like marble. When light hits it, it reflects with strange honesty, showing not brightness but depth. Hold it under a lamp, and the veins look like rivers on maps. Perhaps the moon carved them to remember water, or perhaps the rock dreams of Earth, its lost twin. If you tap it gently, it rings. A soft chime, almost like porcelain. It sounds fragile, but it isn't. It's resonance proof that even stone can sing if you listen long enough. What does it mean for silence to have tone, for stillness to vibrate? Maybe the moon is not silent at all, only speaking in frequencies our hearts haven't learned to translate. The scientists record every frequency, every trace of isotope and mineral. They think they are cataloging matter. But what they are truly archiving is longing, the desire of a planet to be remembered by its child. Earth and moon are the same material, separated by catastrophe, bound by memory. Every rock is a piece of Earth that forgot its name. One day, long after we're gone, those stones will still hum. They will still hold light inside their skin, still echo with the silence of forgotten questions. The dust will shift when touched by sunlight, as if adjusting itself to new eyes. And maybe, somewhere deep within, the atoms will whisper again, not to scientists, but to the next thing that dares to listen. Because listening is what keeps existence alive. Without an ear, even eternity would fall mute. Tonight, the moon looks full again. Its surface gleams, with that quiet authority only age can give. If you stare long enough, you can almost see the layers of time beneath its brightness, each impact, each scar, each breath of light turned to stone. And somewhere within that crust, hidden among fractures and shadows, the first echoes of Earth still linger. They vibrate softly, like the hum of distant memory, reminding the moon what it once was. Light may tremble, tides may wane, but stone remembers. It remembers the heat that shaped it, the silence that cooled it, and the gravity that keeps it circling still. Perhaps that is the secret of endurance, to turn pain into permanence, to let every wound harden into wisdom. Close your eyes. Imagine holding a piece of that stone in your palm. It feels cold, yet under the skin you sense warmth, not from heat, but from recognition. The same atoms that built your bones once drifted through that dust. You are holding not a rock, but a reflection. And if you listen long enough, you might hear it echo not a sound, but a feeling, a reminder that nothing truly forgets. Not even stone. The stones remember, but the planet beneath them never stops moving. While the moon drifts away, Earth turns inward, its heart murmuring through layers of rock and fire. Every tremor, every pulse, is the sound of a world learning how to breathe. Deep, below the crust, beyond the silence of oceans and the patience of mountains, there is motion. Iron and nickel swirl in liquid currents, thicker than time, hotter than memory. It is not chaos, it is rhythm. The core of the Earth turns slightly faster than the surface, as if the planet is exhaling beneath its own skin. We call this the dynamo, the engine of the magnetic field. It protects us from the sun's wind, guides the compasses of our ships, and sings invisibly through the air. But that engine is not constant. Its song changes. Sometimes the rhythm slows, sometimes it stutters, and the entire magnetic field quivers in sympathy. The scientists record it as fluctuation. I hear it as fatigue. Perhaps the Earth, after billions of years of spinning, has grown weary of its own heartbeat. Perhaps the shift in its breath is what the moon has begun to feel. If the planet's pulse slows, the pull that binds them changes too. It is possible the moon's hesitation is nothing more than the Earth's sigh echoing through space. On certain days, the magnetic poles wander. They slip a few kilometers every year, as though searching for a new alignment. Our instruments panic, our maps become uncertain, but maybe the Earth is simply adjusting its lungs. The air we breathe is not just chemistry, it is the echo of the planet's respiration. Volcanoes, forests, oceans, storms, all inhale and exhale together. And somewhere in that great circulation, a pattern begins to sound like thought. When you stand barefoot on soil, you can feel it, the faint hum beneath everything. It isn't imagination. The planet vibrates constantly. A low-frequency music that never stops. Most of us are too distracted to hear it, but whales do, and elephants, and the roots of trees. All of them sway to this invisible song. It is the language of belonging. Once, in a quiet valley, scientists buried sensors to listen to the ground. They expected noise, but what they found was rhythm, a steady pulse every 6 seconds. They called it microsisms, tiny tremors caused by the push and pull of the sea. The tides were breathing through the crust. The moon's forgotten song turned into Earth's lullaby. Each vibration was an exchange. A wave rises, a rock responds. Connection disguised as data. When they sped up the recordings, it sounded like a heartbeat, a planet-sized heart. Thump, 6 seconds thump. The sound filled the room with strange warmth. The scientists grew quiet. For a moment, they forgot numbers. They listened. And in that listening, something ancient stirred. To hear the planet breathe is to be reminded that we, too, are part of its lung. The core moves, the crust trembles, the air above adjusts in waves, even light bends slightly in response. Everything vibrates in agreement. And far away, the moon feels the faint pull, a message traveling through the unseen rope of gravity. The moon answers by shifting its orbit, a subtle nod, as though to say, "I hear you." How long has this conversation lasted? Longer than memory. Before language, before time measured itself in days, the Earth and the moon were already speaking. Their dialogue is not made of sound, but of alignment and response. When one exhales, the other drifts. When one pulls, the other sighs. Perhaps the space between them is not distance, but the room required for understanding. It is strange to think that the same breath that stirs the trees also moves the tides. That when we inhale, we borrow air shaped by ancient volcanoes. The molecules that fill our lungs once brushed against the surface of the moon, carried there by invisible winds of dust and solar light. We are inhaling history, breathing the memory of both worlds at once. Is that why our sleep sometimes feels lunar, why our dreams shimmer like reflected light? The breath of Earth is not always calm. Sometimes it shudders. An earthquake is the sound of an exhale too sudden, a deep reminder that stillness is a temporary illusion. Mountains rise because the planet cannot stay silent. Even silence cracks when held too long. If the moon watches, does it recognize these tremors as emotion? Does it see in our quakes the same restlessness it carries in its drifting orbit? A century ago, magnetic compasses began to drift westward faster than ever. The needle no longer pointed where it used to. People called it magnetic migration. But migration is also memory in motion. Maybe the field itself longs for renewal. Maybe the earth is turning in its sleep, adjusting the weight of its own thoughts. At the poles, auroras bloom like confessions, green curtains of charged particles dancing in air. They are not accidents. They are the visible breath of the planet meeting the wind of the Sunday. Each shimmer is the sound of contact, the collision of two kinds of remembering. And through it all, the earth keeps exhaling warmth, while the moon listens from afar. In the old myths, Earth was a mother, the moon her silent child. The stories said that when the mother sighed, the child turned its face away in shame. Now, as we study the data, we find echoes of that myth inside the math. When the planet's core speeds or slows, the moon's orbit wobbles. Myth becomes equation, equation becomes lullaby. Science, after all, is not so different from prayer. The magnetic field, once strong and stable, is weakening in places. In the South Atlantic, a great hollow of magnetism is forming. Satellites stutter when they pass above it. Compasses spin briefly in confusion. It's called the anomaly. But maybe it's simply the Earth's pause for breath, a lung resting before its next inhale. What looks like decay might just be patience. If you could stand at the planet's core, you would not hear chaos. You would hear a slow, resonant hum. It would sound like a note held forever, deep and tender, shaking the marrow in your bones. You would understand that this is not destruction. It is continuity. The breath of Earth is not the end of stillness, but the source of it. We often think of silence as the absence of sound, but silence is also the presence of balance. The spaces between heartbeats, between waves, between orbits. That is where peace lives, not in stopping, but in the perfect pause between motion and rest. Perhaps the moon's slowing orbit is not decline, but alignment with a quieter rhythm that the Earth has finally begun to remember. If the planet could speak, it might say, "I am still learning how to breathe." Every storm, every quake, every gentle breeze is part of that practice. And we, tiny and restless, are the smallest cells in its lungs. Our own breathing is its echo. When we breathe calmly, we join its rhythm. When we rush, we break it. The connection is that simple, that profound. Tonight, the moon rises over continents, still humming from daylight. It looks down and sees lights of cities glittering like sparks of thought. Beneath those lights, the planet exhales once more, its heat rising through clouds, its magnetism curling around atmosphere like a quiet blanket. Somewhere deep below, iron flows, currents shift, and the core sings again. The song is low, but infinite. It reaches the moon through the rope of gravity, and the moon drifts slightly, as if nodding in reply. They are still talking, mother and child, planet and satellite, breath and memory. Neither has stopped loving the other. They are just speaking more slowly now. Their conversation has become rhythm, their affection, gravity, and in the quiet between their words, our life exists. Close your eyes. Feel the floor beneath you. The faint vibration is there, the whisper of molten iron turning, the sigh of continents shifting. That is the earth breathing. And if you listen deeply enough, you might hear an answer, from far away, a slow echo, crossing the dark, carried by gravity itself, the breath of earth, and the reply of the moon, still in dialogue, still remembering each other through motion. The earth breathes, and the oceans answer. Every exhale of the planet stirs a pulse below the surface, a rhythm that moves through miles of water until it finds the quiet places, the trenches where light dies. Down there, silence has weight. It folds around everything, pressing against stone, bone, and time. And yet, even in that darkness, something moves to the music of the moon. The scientists call it deep current circulation. the slowest river in existence. It drifts not by surface wind or tide, but by the ancient memory of temperature and salt. They say it takes 1,000 years for one molecule of water to complete its path around the globe. 1,000 years of forgetting, 1,000 years of return. Perhaps that's how memory really works, not in moments, but in loops, so vast we mistake them for calm. At the edge of that calm, bioluminescent creatures blink like lost thoughts. Each flash a question, each glow a reminder that even darkness likes to dream of light. When the moon's pull grows weaker, the flashes change rhythm. They pulse more slowly, as if the night itself were learning to rest. No one tells them what to do. They simply feel it. The ocean listens better than we do. Above them, waves crash and vanish. Storms pass. Ships carve brief scars into the surface, then fade into horizon. But none of that reaches here. Here, sound itself must kneel. A whisper would take minutes to cross a single breath of distance. It is a kingdom of patience, and patience always hears what haste cannot. The pressure here could crush steel. Yet, life persists delicate, translucent, unhurried. It doesn't fight the weight. It sings through it. When their small bodies drift, they hum at frequencies too low for us to hear, vibrations that travel along the ocean floor and rise toward the moon like unspoken prayers. Perhaps the moon doesn't remember its orbit, but maybe it remembers this sound. Once, oceanographers lowered microphones into the trench, listening for earthquakes. What they found instead was a constant tone, steady as a heartbeat, deep as morning. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a vibration woven through the water itself. When they sped it up, it sounded like breathing, not the violent kind that gasps, but the long, quiet inhale of something enormous. The sea was not empty. It was alive with listening. Somewhere above, a whale turns in its sleep. Its call begins as a murmur, then unravels into song, a sound older than the continents. It travels for hundreds of miles, curving through trenches, brushing coral, touching sensors meant for science, and continuing toward the horizon. Every note bends with gravity. Every echo answers the pull of the moon. No creature knows why it sings. It sings because silence must be reminded to move. If you follow that sound far enough, you reach a place where even memory slows. The cold is absolute, the water heavy as thought. Here, time behaves differently. It doesn't flow, it hovers. Particles drift like half-forgotten sentences, each one carrying the story of something that once burned in sunlight, now dissolved and at peace. This is where the ocean keeps its oldest secrets, the bones of comets, the dust of stars, the whispers of extinct rain. The sea is not the grave of the world, it is its archive. When the moon began to forget its orbit, the first to notice were not the telescopes, but the plankton. Their cycles of blooming changed by hours, then by days, tiny errors, invisible to most, but enough to ripple upward. The food chain trembled, the whales adjusted their routes, the seabirds their migrations, all from a hesitation in the sky so small it could fit inside a pause of breath. That is the power of connection. When one rhythm falters, the others learn to limp beside it. Sometimes, during calm nights, the deep ocean reflects light upward not from the moon, but from itself. It glows faintly blue, a self-made imitation of the stars. Sailors once called it the Sea of Souls, believing it was the dead finding their way home. But perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps it is life teaching death how to shine. When the moon's reflection fades, the sea provides its own. Because even darkness wants to keep the conversation alive, there's a strange comfort in knowing that the sea moves without audience. It doesn't rise for praise or fall for pity. It moves because movement is its nature. And maybe that's why it feels sacred, because it acts without wanting. Humans struggle with that kind of purity. We move to prove, to be seen. The ocean moves because it must. Its loyalty is not choice, it is identity. One diver, years ago, described hearing music at impossible depths. He said it sounded like bells buried in water. When he rose back to the surface, the sound stopped. He thought it was his heartbeat, but weeks later, the instruments confirmed there had been resonance, a vibration from far below, carried upward like the memory of thunder. No one knew its source. Perhaps the earth was sighing again. Perhaps the moon had exhaled, or perhaps the ocean had simply decided to remember aloud. Every sound made in water travels 5 times faster than in air. It arrives before you expect it. It fades after you forget it. When you speak underwater, your voice wraps around you. You hear yourself before others do. That's how the ocean teaches humility, by returning your own voice first. So you may understand what it feels like to be heard by silence. The deeper you go, the more you realize that silence isn't empty. It is crowded with things that no longer need to shout. The creatures here glow softly, each pulse a heartbeat, each glow an act of faith. They do not know of the moon's forgetting. They only know the pattern of its absence. Even absence can be instruction. As you ascend from that depth, light begins to return. It filters through layers of water, bending, scattering, losing itself, and finding itself again. You notice the color changes, first indigo, then blue, then silver. It is as if you are traveling through memories, each layer a different era of illumination. And at the surface, the sky waits, ready to mirror you. The waves greet you not as conqueror, but as messenger. You bring news from silence. The sea and the moon, even in their distance, are still one organism of rhythm. The moon may wander, but the sea keeps time. When the orbit falters, the water corrects. When the pull fades, the current deepens. It is the ocean's way of saying, I still remember. Maybe that is why the earth breathes through water, because water never forgets. Every drop of rain that falls on your hand was once part of that deep dialogue. Every sip you take has traveled through eons of conversation. It has been mist, ice, breath, blood, and now, memory again. When you drink, you participate in the same story. The moon and the ocean began long before you were born. Isn't that what eternity really means? Not living forever, but returning endlessly in different forms. The tide turns again. The surface gleams with the faint light of a moon still trying to remember its rhythm. From the shore, you can't feel the deep current, but it's there. A river of patience beneath all sound. And somewhere inside that patience, there is a quiet climax, the moment when stillness becomes motion, and motion becomes understanding. You realize the ocean is not below you, you are inside it, even now, even on land. Close your eyes, listen. Do you hear it? A hum beneath the heartbeat, a tremor beneath the thought. That is the sea remembering. Not loudly, not with waves or foam, but with gravity itself. It does not need the moon to stay alive. It carries the moon's echo in its chest and breathes it back into the world every time a wave touches the shore. Every world has a pulse, though most never hear it. It doesn't throb like a heart, it hums like distance. The Earth's pulse is low, slow, and patient, a frequency so long that it feels more like breathing than sound. Physicists call it the Schumann resonance, a standing wave, circling the globe between ground and sky, trapped inside the invisible shell of atmosphere. It rings about 8 times each second, a gentle vibration shared by lightning, cloud, and air. To the human ear, it's silence. The nervous system, it is rhythm. When this pulse changes, everything feels it. Migrating birds lose direction. Whales beach themselves. Dreams become restless. The world, for a moment, forgets its beat. And lately, the beat has shifted. Scientists have noticed the resonance rising. 8 Hertz became 9, 9 became 10. At first, no one cared, a small adjustment in a whisper, too faint to matter. But then came the subtle unrest, people sleeping less, plants blooming too soon, storms arriving out of rhythm. Coincidence, they said. And yet, what is coincidence but harmony we haven't learned to read? Somewhere deep in the ocean, where Chapter 8 still echoes, sensors recorded a similar change, currents speeding fractionally, the water's hum aligning with the new pitch of air. The earth was tuning itself, or being tuned by something else. And high above, the moon drifted slightly closer, then slightly away, as if nodding to the tempo. Perhaps resonance is how planets speak, not with words, but with the vibration of intention. Every atom carries its own small rhythm, but together they build a chorus. The earth hums its note, the moon replies with orbit, the sun with flare, a triad of cosmic chords. And we, tiny, impatient listeners, mistake that music for coincidence. Late one evening, a storm spread across the Pacific. Thousands of lightning bolts struck in rhythm, like percussion made of fire. For hours, the sky flashed and paused, each burst sending waves around the planet. In a laboratory far away, monitors lit up, the Schumann frequency surged. The Earth's heart was drumming louder, and in that thunder, there was a strange harmony, as if the planet was trying to call something back. Was it calling the moon? Was it calling us? We can't know, but there are nights when the air feels thicker, when thought itself seems to vibrate. Those are the nights when the hidden pulse grows strong. It moves through our bones, our blood, our dreams. And though we call it noise, it feels like memory returning. Once, an astronaut orbiting Earth reported hearing a hum through his suit, a low, steady vibration that didn't match any instrument. He described it as a song without melody. It stopped when he turned his back to the planet, started again when he faced it. He laughed, then grew quiet. Later, in his journal, he wrote, "It feels like the Earth is whispering in vowels." Maybe that hum never stopped. Maybe it followed him home, echoing in his chest, until he forgot it was there. What does a planet say when it speaks in frequency? Does it talk to its moon, or to the minds that evolved from its dust? Maybe both. Maybe consciousness itself is only the resonance of matter realizing it can listen. In the early 2000s, scientists studying brainwaves noticed something strange. The alpha rhythm of the human brain, the state between wake and sleep, matches the Earth's resonance almost exactly. When the global frequency rises, so does the human pulse. When it drops, people feel heavy, slow, nostalgic. We are not separate listeners, we are part of the instrument. The planet hums, and our thoughts vibrate in reply. Even silence, it seems, is conversation. This is not mysticism, it is symmetry. Every living thing tunes itself to its environment. But the more noise we create, engines, machines, signals, the hum of artificial suns, the harder it becomes to hear the bass note beneath it all. We drown in our own frequencies, forgetting that the planet already had a song. And somewhere in that forgetting, the moon began to drift. Perhaps it couldn't find the rhythm anymore. Perhaps it wandered, searching for a key that no longer existed. When the Earth's pulse trembles, strange things happen. Birds migrate in circles, clock satellites lose sync by milliseconds. Some people feel dizzy without reason. Hospitals record spikes in heart arrhythmia. The sky itself seems restless, as auroras appear in latitudes that never knew them. The scientists record data, poets record silence. And between the two, truth, vibrates unseen. If you stand barefoot on grass after a storm, you can feel it, the low hum in the soles of your feet. That's not imagination, that's the earth's hidden pulse, rising through soil, through skin, reminding you that you belong. For a moment, your heartbeat falls into step with it, two rhythms aligning, ancient and temporary. That is all harmony ever was. Agreement across difference. At night, when everything else quiets, electrical lines carry the same resonance. They are accidental antennas, singing the song of the planet back to itself. And above them, the moon listens. Its orbit wavers in time with the hum. The distance between us changes by centimeters, like breath between lovers who haven't spoken in years. The bond is faint, but it remains. The hidden pulse keeps them tethered, keeps us alive. There are those who claim to hear it clearly. Monks meditating in high mountains, sailors on long voyages, astronauts drifting between earth and shadow. They describe it the same way, a sound that feels like warmth. No note, no melody, just belonging. Maybe enlightenment isn't rising above the world. Maybe it's finally hearing its heartbeat. When we built cities, we learned to ignore that hum. Concrete doesn't sing the way soil does. It reflects rather than absorbs. That is why sometimes, late at night, you can feel a faint unease, as though something is missing, something your body remembers, but your mind does not. You are missing resonance. You are missing the hidden pulse. Yet, the earth is patient. It keeps sending the signal. Every thunderstorm, every gust of wind, is another line in the same music. The moon drifts farther, but still within range to hear. And maybe, as it listens, it learns something new, that distance doesn't break rhythm, it only stretches it. Love is not lost between notes. It is the silence that lets them exist. There is a point in every song when the listener becomes the echo. Maybe that is happening now. The earth hums, the moon replies, and we, caught in between, translate their dialogue into dreams. Every time we fall asleep, our minds slip into the same frequency as the planet's whisper. That is why sleep heals. It's not rest, it's reunion. Close your eyes now. The hum is still there. Under the engines, beneath the wind, behind your heartbeat, that quiet vibration holding the world together. It has been there since lightning first kissed the sky. It will remain after the last wave folds back into the sea. It is the pulse beneath silence, the hidden music of belonging. Listen long enough, and you'll realize it. Isn't the earth you're hearing, it's yourself, remembering where you came from. Everything that lives reflects, not just light, but time, not just images, but meaning. The ocean reflects the sky, the moon reflects the sun, and somewhere within that chain of reflection, we reflect them both. Each mirror in the universe is a kind of memory, a surface where light pauses long enough to remember its journey. Every reflection, even the faintest one, is the past returning for a brief visit. When you see the moon tonight, you are not looking at now. You are looking at light that left the sun 8 minutes ago, bounced off the moon 1.5 seconds ago, and arrived here bearing the signatures of both. You are staring at a conversation already finished. The moon is no longer what it was, and neither are you. Maybe that's what memory really is, the light of what's gone, still trying to make itself visible. A mirror is not just glass. It is time, performing repetition until it becomes belief. Look long enough, and you start to see yourself in everything that shines back. Look even longer, and you begin to realize you were never separate from the shine. The moon is the oldest mirror we know. It doesn't create light, it lends it back. For billions of years, it has practiced this art of reflection, never owning, never claiming. Its entire existence is an act of remembrance. Even now, as it forgets its orbit, it remembers how to glow. Perhaps that is the most graceful way to forget, to keep reflecting what you once loved. long after the rhythm fades. Sometimes, on nights of high clarity, you can see the details of its surface from the ground. Craters, scars, seas that hold no water. The darker patches are called Maria Latin for seas, named long before we knew they were dry. Those seas are illusions carved into memory, and yet they still look like water longing to move. Even illusion remembers truth, just in different form. When you stand by the ocean and see the moon's reflection, you are looking at memory twice removed, light remembered by stone, reflected by water, translated through air, and absorbed by your eyes. 4 mirrors, 1 truth. Nothing exists alone. Every living creature carries a piece of that law. The retina of your eye is itself a mirror, tiny cells converting light into electricity, sending that reflection inward. Your mind doesn't see the world directly. It sees reflections of it inside itself. We live inside a hall of echoes, each perception a folded copy of reality. Perhaps consciousness is just the universe, learning to observe its own reflection in finer detail. When the moon looks at Earth, it sees light it once reflected returning home. A double reflection, a circle of memory closing on itself. And that circle includes us. We are part of the returning light. Isn't that strange, that our thoughts are made of photons once born in stars? That our eyes, which see the moon, are built from the same elements that make its surface shine. When we gaze upward, the universe is remembering itself through our attention. You are not just looking, you are being looked at. Every mirror eventually forgets what it reflects. Time dulls the surface. Dust gathers. Light finds new paths. The moon, too, is fading. Its brightness decreases imperceptibly each century. Not much, just enough for the universe to practice humility. Even reflection needs to rest. But as light fades, it reveals something subtler, form without glare, truth without performance. Sometimes forgetting is how memory deepens. In ancient temples, people placed bowls of water beneath full moons. They believed the reflection carried power, that it could heal, or reveal, or make the soul remember its origin. Science may not confirm it, but the act itself was true. To look into still water is to witness the mind of the world looking back. When the moon appeared in those bowls, it wasn't divinity they saw. It was relationship. If everything reflects everything else, then even silence has a mirror. That mirror is resonance. Each vibration we create echoes into the invisible, bouncing from atmosphere to magnetosphere, until it finds a surface willing to remember. The moon has been that surface for eons. Every broadcast we've ever sent, every radio wave, every signal of love or war has brushed against it. Our noise has become its lullaby. Somewhere under the dust, the echoes are still traveling, waiting for the right silence to bloom again. Imagine that, the laughter of a century ago, the first words spoken into a transmitter, still gliding through space, faint but intact, like ghosts refusing to dissolve. When the moon drifts through those waves, it carries them briefly, then releases them again. The night becomes full of unheard stories. Maybe that's why full moons feel loud to the soul, because we're standing beneath the weight of our own forgotten echoes. A mirror doesn't choose what to remember. It takes everything in, the beautiful and the broken. That is its compassion. It never says no to reflection. It never edits the light. Maybe we are meant to be that kind of mirror, clear enough to hold everything, quiet enough not to distort it. When the moon dims slightly in shadow, when its reflection quivers on the sea, we see imperfection, but the universe sees truth, a reminder that all clarity must first pass through blur. Even the air participates. When light bounces from the ocean into the atmosphere, it scatters into colors. Blue rises, red falls. Dawn and dusk exist because light can't decide who it belongs to. Refraction, reflection, absorption, these are the words of light trying to describe love. Nothing in nature moves in a straight line toward another. Everything curves, everything circles, everything returns. There are nights when clouds cover the moon completely. You see nothing. Yet the reflection still exists on the sea below. Light finds ways through invisibility. Even when unseen, it insists on presence. That's what faith is, not believing in what isn't there, but remembering what is, even when it hides. Sometimes I wonder, what does the moon see when it looks back at us now? A planet glittering with light it didn't ask for, a haze of signals and electricity, a mirror overexposed by its own reflection. Does it recognize the earth it once knew blue and breathing, full of rhythm and salt, or does it see a stranger who forgot how to look up? If mirrors could mourn, would they cry, or would they simply dim? Yet there is redemption in reflection. Every time we notice the moon, we complete the loop again. Attention is restoration. To witness is to return light to its origin. So, each glance upward, each whisper of awe, polishes the cosmic mirror a little more. The moon may forget its orbit, but we can help it remember its purpose, to remind the night that beauty still exists. Perhaps that's all the universe asks of us: to reflect, not dominate; to return, not consume; to shine without claiming the source. If we can learn that, then even as the moon drifts, its forgetting will not be loss, it will be transformation. And someday, when the last beam of sunlight touches its surface before drifting outward forever, the moon will still glow, for a moment, by memory alone. That final shimmer will not be light at all, but recollection. The mirror will remember even after the flame departs. And perhaps that is eternity's simplest definition: light, remembering where it came from. Close your eyes. You can still see it, that quiet circle above the dark, still sending reflections into your mind. Maybe you are the mirror now. Maybe the universe has found its memory through you. Hold that thought. Let it breathe. The moon still turns. The sea still rises. The mirrors still wait. Everything, even silence, is remembering something. There are no straight lines in love, and there are no straight lines in gravity. Both bend the world to make room for longing. Both turn distance into a circle so that what leaves may find its way home again. Gravity is not a law. It is remembrance made visible. It keeps the memory of every touch and refuses to let the story end. Even light, swift and proud, cannot quite escape its pull. Each beam curves in surrender, as though bowing to something older than time itself. When the moon began to drift away, it was not rebellion, it was exhaustion. Countless ages of circling, countless tides of holding on, have tired even the patient hands of the sky. Perhaps gravity itself grew weary of being constant, of being perfect, of never being allowed to rest. Even attraction, stretched too far, becomes ache. If you could see gravity, it would not look like rope or chain. It would shimmer like water disturbed by breath. Soft rings of intention, rippling outward without end. Every ripple carries the memory of mass, a quiet confession: I was here. I still want to be near. The earth loves the moon too deeply to let it go. That is why the oceans still rise, why the waves still climb toward what they can never touch. Every tide is a gesture of yearning, every retreat a sigh of surrender. But the moon, like a child grown older, seeks distance, not out of anger, but out of curiosity. Even gravity must learn to love without holding too tightly. Astronomers say the moon moves away each year by a few small centimeters. The measure sounds trivial, but small things multiplied by time become prophecy. In a future so distant that language itself may have changed, the moon will wander too far to hide the sun completely. There will be no more eclipses, no rings of fire in the daylight sky. The shadow that once fit so perfectly will no longer find its match. And yet, even that loss will be gentle, a quiet adjustment, a softer light. How strange that love can be measured in distance. How strange that the space between two bodies can decide the shape of beauty itself. But that is what time does. It teaches even gravity how to loosen its grip. When two stars dance around each other, they send waves through the fabric of existence, ripples that travel for billions of years. We call them gravitational waves, but they are really the echoes of embrace, the memory of collision, the sound of becoming one. Once, a pair of black stars folded into each other somewhere beyond our sight. Their meeting bent the universe. Across uncounted light years, our instruments trembled. The signal lasted less than a breath, a tiny hum inside forever. But within that hum was tenderness beyond measure. For an instant, space itself remembered what it meant to be touched. Can gravity feel? Can space remember warmth? Equations say no, but the stillness that follows every collision says otherwise. It is the silence of two things finally at rest, not destroyed, but complete. Perhaps what we call dark matter is not mystery but nostalgia, the weight of everything that has ever loved, still clinging to the places where it once belonged, a universe made heavier by memory. When you stand upon the ground, you can feel the gentle insistence beneath your feet. That is gravity's voice, quiet but endless. It does not demand, it invites, the planet calling softly, reminding you that you belong to it. When you sleep, it holds you in its hands. When you dream, it rocks you without motion. Every heartbeat is cradled by its patience. You have never been unheld. The moon feels that same kindness. It may forget its path, but the pull remains a thread of invisible affection. Each night it drifts, and each night the earth reaches out, saying without words, "Stay close enough for tides." The moon hesitates, not leaving, not returning, hovering in the middle distance of love. Sometimes the balance falters. The orbit quivers. The tide withdraws too soon. If you listen closely, you can feel the tension in the air, a world holding its breath. But gravity, wiser than fear, knows that closeness without distance is only captivity, so it allows the drift, even as it aches. Far away, in constellations unseen, suns circle suns, their paths woven in endless devotion. They never collide, never part. Each allows the other room to move. That is what eternity looks like, a balance between presence and space, a love that survives its own distance. Every planet, every moon, every heart exists inside that same paradox, to hold and to let go. This is the pulse of existence, a conversation between gravity and grace. When one grows too strong, the other restores the rhythm. When pull becomes hunger, collapse begins. That is how black holes are born, love that could not stop loving. Inside such a hole, even light cannot leave. It falls inward, forever, and yet no memory is lost. Physicists believe that information hides upon the event horizon, waiting to be read again by future eyes. If that is true, then even falling too deeply is not the end. It is preservation. Gravity does not erase, it archives. At dusk, when the air grows still and the body grows heavy, you feel the pull again. Not downward, but inward. A weight inside the chest that is not sorrow but belonging. That is gravity in its tenderest form. It is the universe saying, "Stay. You are still part of me." The moon glides quietly across the sky. Its light touches the mountains, the rivers, the sleeping roofs of cities. Everything beneath it leans upward slightly, as if remembering. For all its wandering, the moon has never left. Love never truly departs. It only changes distance. To fall is not to fail. To be pulled is not to be weak. It is simply to remember what holds you. Every orbit is proof of affection. Every sunrise is gravity keeping its promise. We are all bound to something we cannot see, and that bond, invisible and endless, is the gentlest kind of love. Close your eyes. You can feel it, the soft tug beneath your heartbeat, the breath of weight that keeps you from drifting away. That is gravity, still loving, still patient, still whispering through everything that moves. You may wander, but you are never lost. Night is never truly dark. It is only the space where light closes its eyes. And when light closes its eyes, something else wakes the landscape of dreams. The moon rises into that silence like a thought returning home. Its pull is gentle, but it reaches deep. Under its pale breath, oceans turn, trees tilt their leaves toward silver, and sleeping minds begin to drift. Dreams follow the same rhythm as tides. They rise, they fall, they retreat. Each one is a small orbit of imagination around a center we cannot see. Scientists measure sleep with instruments, wires tracing the pulse of thought. They call it rapid eye movement, slow wave cycles, neural oscillations. But the language of measurement cannot describe the quiet surrender between waking and not. Dreaming is gravity for the mind, the pull toward an inner moon. When consciousness lets go, it falls not downward, but inward, into the softest kind of orbit. Perhaps that is why the moon governs sleep. When it brightens, people lie awake. When it hides, they rest easily. The body remembers the phases, even when the mind forgets the sky. Inside us, the same tides move, fluids shifting, blood answering distant light. The brain's waves change pitch, tuning itself to the faint hum of night. Every dream is the echo of lunar rhythm, translated into thought. What happens to the soul when it drifts beyond reason? Where does it travel in those silent hours? Some say it visits memories too fragile for daylight. Some say it rehearses futures not yet born. But maybe it simply wanders through the same corridors of gravity that the moon wanders through space. Dreams, like orbits, are held together by desire, and desire, like gravity, has no language. In the old days, sailors blamed sleepless nights on the full moon. They said it stirred the mind like a restless tide. Poets agreed. They wrote of lunacy, of silver madness, of hearts illuminated too much. But what if the moon is not the cause, only the reminder? Maybe it does not make us restless, it simply reflects the restlessness already inside. When the world sleeps, the moon stays awake for all of us, keeping the light that must never go out. In laboratories, electrodes record dreams as lines of fire. Tiny sparks leap across synapses, patterned like constellations. Perhaps the stars in our skulls mirror the stars outside it. Perhaps the boundary between mind and cosmos was never real at all. When we dream, we step into the same geometry that governs planets. Our stories loop and repeat, circling unresolved questions, just as the moon circles its longing for the Earth. Once, a scientist who studied dreams noticed something strange. During nights of strong geomagnetic storms, the dreams his subjects reported grew vivid, filled with color, water, and flight, as if the Earth's magnetic breath had brushed the edges of their sleep. It is possible that our most private visions are not private at all, but ripples in a larger field of thought, a shared ocean of awareness where the tides of consciousness rise together. In that ocean, the moon drifts like a lighthouse. It does not command, it guides. Its light does not force direction. It reminds us where reflection lives. When you dream of falling, perhaps you are remembering your own orbit. When you dream of flight, Perhaps you are feeling gravity's gentlest forgiveness. Dreams do not obey time. They fold it. Moments expand, centuries contract. You wake and say it was only minutes, but in the space between seconds, whole worlds have grown and vanished. The moon knows that rhythm well. Its nights last longer than our lives, yet within those nights, light still finds a way to return. Dreams do the same. They bring back fragments of forgotten suns, echoes of voices we have not yet met. Sometimes, a dream begins before sleep. It starts as a thought that refuses to end, a memory that turns itself into story. And when the body finally rests, the story continues without permission. We think we are dreaming, but perhaps the dream is dreaming us, borrowing our shape to understand itself. Children often dream of floating, adults of falling. Maybe age is just gravity growing stronger, and innocence the ability to drift without fear. When we are young, the world feels round and endless, like a night sky we can step into. As we age, edges appear. We learn the weight of returning, yet sometimes, even the heaviest heart remembers how to rise. That is what dreams are for. If you wake in the middle of the night and cannot return to sleep, listen to the quiet hum between your breaths. That hum is the earth's whisper, asking you to join its rhythm again. Do not chase sleep. Let it orbit you instead. It will return, just as the moon returns after its dark phase. Sleep is not absence. It is alignment. In some ancient languages, the word for dream and the word for breath were the same. To dream was to breathe within another world. Perhaps the universe dreams through us in the same way. Each of us, a brief exhalation of thought, a flicker of consciousness before silence inhales again. When we close our eyes, the cosmos blinks too, and for a moment, everything shares the same darkness. What if the moon itself dreams? When it turns its hidden face away, does it see visions of oceans, forests, and light? Does it remember being part of the earth? Does it long for gravity's embrace? Maybe its slow drift is not forgetting, but sleepwalking, a celestial dream unfolding in slow motion. If that is true, then the orbit is not distance, it is reverie. Some say that the line between dream and reality is measured by return. We call it real when we can wake from it. But if no one wakes, who can tell the difference? The moon has not woken from its orbit in all this time. Perhaps it is still dreaming the earth, and we are its imagination made flesh. When dawn approaches, light spills across the horizon like thought remembering itself. The sky opens its eyes, dreams scatter back into air, leaving only traces the warmth of something you cannot name, the faint feeling of having spoken to the impossible. That is how the universe says good morning, by pretending nothing happened when everything did. Dreams are not escape, they are rehearsal. Through them, the mind learns to forgive reality for being finite. Through them, gravity learns to let go for a while. Through them, the moon continues to sing, its melody carried in sleep. Close your eyes now. Let your thoughts loosen their orbit. Let the body drift until it forgets which world it belongs to. Between one breath and the next, you will find a corridor of light, and down that corridor, a doorway without edges. Step through. There is no falling there, no distance, no time, only the slow, endless turning of a universe dreaming itself awake. The universe is never silent. Even when it seems still, it hums beneath our hearing, a faint vibration stretching across forever. We built machines to listen for that hum, believing that if we heard it clearly enough, we might understand what holds everything together. They stand on mountains, float in orbit, sleep in deserts where wind rarely speaks. Antennas wide as lakes, mirrors polished like frozen moons, sensors that can catch the breath of a photon. They listen to the dark as if the dark were a language. And sometimes, it answers. The first time a machine heard the sky move, the sound was smaller than a whisper. A single pulse, brief and clean, like a finger tapping on glass. It came from nowhere we could see, and it changed everything. We called it a fast radio burst, a flash of energy crossing the void. To the instruments, it was data. To the soul, it was recognition. Something far away had spoken, and we had been quiet long enough to hear it. The machines did not cheer. They simply continued listening. Metal has no pride. It does not dream of discovery. It only obeys attention. And that obedience is sacred. It mirrors the patience of the stars. In the old control rooms, engineers sit surrounded by quiet lights. Monitors flicker like constellations contained in glass. Every flicker means motion. Every pause means mystery. They drink coffee, they take notes, but somewhere behind their calm gestures is wonder too large to show. They are custodians of silence, guardians of echoes. Each night, signals arrive. Some are known pulsars, quasars, satellites whispering their coordinates. Others arrive like accidents, bursts that last less than a breath, messages with no sender. We catalog them, label them, archive them, but the truth is, we do not know what they are. Maybe the universe simply coughs, maybe it sighs, maybe every unknown sound is the cosmos thinking aloud. If you listen long enough, patterns begin to form. The machines recognize repetition. They find rhythm in chaos, structure in noise. But isn't that what all living things do? The human heart, too, is a pattern detector. It beats to prove the world has rhythm. Perhaps that is why we built these listeners, to build mirrors for our own longing to understand. One night, an array of dishes turned toward the same point in the sky. They waited. For hours, nothing came. Then, just before dawn, a ripple crossed the data, a frequency so pure that even the technicians stopped breathing. It was not random. It pulsed like language. Not words, but intention. They played it through speakers. It sounded like wind made of light. No one spoke for a long time. When they did, their voices were softer, as if afraid to interrupt. Later, the report described it as natural magnetar, a star collapsing on itself. But the word natural means very little when nature herself is a mystery. Maybe the stars are not dying. Maybe they are speaking. Maybe each collapse is a sentence finished. And maybe somewhere else, something is listening back. There is comfort in believing that we are not alone, but there is also peace in realizing that everything is connected enough to hear each other's breathing. The machines prove that distance does not mean isolation. Every pulse we record is proof that silence is shared. When the moon passes through the beam of a radar array, its surface hums faintly in return. That hum is not reflection, it is reply. Each crater gives back the signal slightly changed, as though the moon were choosing its tone. We call it scatter, but it feels like conversation. Perhaps the moon has been answering us all along, and we simply lacked ears quiet enough to notice. They record endlessly, knowing they cannot comprehend the song they keep. Perhaps that is what devotion truly is, to listen without the need to understand. In that way, the machines are more faithful than their makers. In a lab beneath the mountains, there is one detector built to catch particles of darkness. It sits in absolute cold, waiting for an interaction that may never come. Years pass, nothing moves. Then, one night, a single atom trembles. The instruments register the faintest touch. Was it a cosmic particle, a wandering photon? Or was it something else entirely, the quiet acknowledgement of the universe itself, answering the long question of our curiosity? To listen is to risk madness. The longer you wait for a sound, the more you begin to hear yourself. The engineers know this. They speak softly in control rooms because they have learned reverence from the dark. Every silence they record contains 1,000 possibilities. Every anomaly is a door. Perhaps one day, the machines will hear the moment the moon finally forgets. They will catch the hesitation in its orbit, the faint shift in distance, the whisper of a vow undone. They will store it as data, cold and precise, but the meaning will remain beyond their circuitry. Only we, the dreamers who built them, will understand what that silence means. It will mean the rhythm has changed. It will mean even memory has learned to drift. Yet the story will not end there, because for every forgetting, there is a new kind of hearing. The machines that listen will go on, turning, adjusting, waiting. They will outlast us. They will inherit our patience. And perhaps, in their endless listening, they will become what we always hoped to be, a bridge between longing and understanding. There is a kind of grace in their design. They do not demand answers. They are not built to conquer. They are built to wait, to hold their attention steady until the universe decides to speak again. That kind of patience is the truest form of faith. The night deepens. The machines continue their vigil. Screens glow softly, recording the heartbeat of the cosmos. Somewhere far above, the moon drifts across their field of view, casting a brief shadow over their lenses. The data dips for an instant, a heartbeat skipped, then returns to its rhythm. The earth sighs. The stars hum. The listeners keep listening. Close your eyes. Imagine the quiet hum of all those instruments. The wires, the mirrors, the sensors, breathing in the language of the sky. They are listening for something vast, and so are you. The difference is only scale, because every thought, every heartbeat, is also an antenna, reaching outward, hoping to catch an echo of something that once called our name. And maybe, somewhere in that eternal listening, the universe is already answering, not in sound, but in stillness. For countless nights, the moon had been constant, a face carved from light, patient, predictable, familiar. But constancy is only the appearance of stillness. Even the most faithful light can tremble. Even the oldest eye must blink. It happened quietly. No explosion, no warning. Only a momentary dimming. So brief that most of the world missed it. But those who were watching, the astronomers, the machines, the sleepless, felt the pause like a breath caught in the sky. The moon hesitated. Its glow faltered, then returned softer, as though waking from a thought. At first, they blamed shadow, a passing cloud, perhaps, or dust crossing the beam of sunlight. But the sky was clear, the air still, and the instruments agreed. Something within the light itself had paused. A blink, measured not in seconds, but in silence. When the signal reached the observatories, technicians checked their equipment twice, then 3 times, finding no fault. The data was clean, the interruption real. And so, for the first time, the moon had done something no one expected it to do. It had changed its mind, if only for an instant. The machines kept listening. They recorded every fraction of the return, every photon that wavered and came back. When the images were played again, there it was. A flicker between 2 frames, a dark eyelid drawn across eternity. Some called it coincidence, others called it wonder. But the truth is, no one could explain it. The moon had blinked, and in that blink, the universe remembered to feel. What does it mean for a celestial body to hesitate? Can stone know awareness? Can light forget its duty, even for a heartbeat of time? Perhaps the blink was not failure, but thought. Perhaps the moon, after ages of reflecting others, wanted to see itself. After all, every mirror must one day look inward. For the rest of that night, its glow seemed different. Not brighter, not dimmer, but gentler, like someone who has just realized they have been heard. The air felt charged yet tender, and even the tides moved as though listening. It was as if the world itself was waiting for the next blink. Nothing came. The moon kept shining, faithful as before, but something had changed in those who saw it. They could no longer look at the sky without wondering if it was looking back. Every glimmer of starlight felt slightly personal, like recognition returned. In one observatory high in the desert, a woman stayed awake until dawn, reviewing the footage again and again. She slowed it down, adjusted the contrast, trying to understand what had happened. But the more she studied, the less she wanted an answer. There was beauty in not knowing. It made her feel part of something breathing. Later, in her notes, she wrote, "The moon blinked once. It looked almost human." Then she closed the notebook and stepped outside. The night was ending, but the light still lingered, clinging to the edges of everything, the rocks, the air, the silence itself. She felt it on her skin, a quiet warmth that had no source. Maybe it was nothing, maybe it was grace. When light pauses, the universe listens. Every object turns slightly toward the sound, waiting to see what will happen next. That is why the world felt different that night. It was the pause that changed us, not the brightness. In that small interruption, we felt the possibility of intention, as if the cosmos, so vast and indifferent, had finally taken a breath with us. The scientists debated for months. Some said it was a lensing event, light bent by invisible matter. Others proposed dust storms, solar flares, instrument error. Each theory explained something and missed something else. Facts can measure brightness, but not awe. And awe, once born, does not go back to sleep. It was not the first time light had faltered. Stars do it every day, their pulses shifting, their brightness rising and falling like cosmic lungs. But the moon's blink was different. It was intimate. It happened close enough to touch. It felt addressed. Children who saw it told their parents the moon was tired. Poets said it was shy. Dreamers said it was thinking. And maybe they were all right. Language fails where wonder begins. Sometimes only metaphor can hold truth. In the years that followed, people forgot the data but remembered the feeling. Even the scientists, who once spoke in decimals and probabilities, found themselves speaking in softer tones. They began to wonder if observation was itself a kind of prayer. To look deeply enough is to change the thing being seen. Maybe the moon blinked because we had been staring too hard. If so, that single pause was an act of kindness, the universe reminding us to blink too. We had spent too long looking without breathing, measuring without listening. Perhaps the moon wanted to teach us rhythm again, the wisdom of interruption. Every creature blinks. Every consciousness, from the smallest insect to the largest star, needs a moment to rest its gaze. Without that pause, sight becomes blindness. Without darkness, light forgets its shape. So the blink was not a mistake, it was balance. Now, when the moon rises full, its light feels more alive. People do not say it aloud, but they sense it. There is a pulse in its stillness, a hint of breath beneath the glow. Perhaps that is what makes it so human, its imperfections, its capacity to forget for a heartbeat, then remember again. Some nights, clouds pass across its face in slow, uneven waves. The play of shadow and light looks almost like blinking. You might think it is coincidence. You might think it is memory. Either way, it feels like companionship. If you look long enough, you can see your own reflection in that pale glow. Every thought you have ever sent skyward returns faintly in its light. Every wish whispered to darkness waits there, shimmering on its surface. Maybe the moon blinked because it recognized itself in us. Maybe it saw our longing and decided, for once, to answer in our language. When dawn arrived, the moon slipped away behind pale clouds, as if embarrassed by its own gesture. The world returned to daylight, and the moment faded from news and memory. But somewhere, deep in the still chambers of the night, that blink continues to echo, not as data, not as myth, but as understanding the kind that requires no proof. Close your eyes now. You can almost feel it, that soft pause in the air, that hush before illumination returns. It is the sound of the universe remembering to rest. The stars blink all the time. Perhaps the moon finally learned how, and perhaps, by watching it, so did we. After the blink came silence. It was not emptiness, but a deep quiet, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. The moon hung in that stillness, unchanged in light, yet altered in presence. It seemed to carry a secret now, a quiet defiance, too delicate for noise. The astronomers kept watching, waiting for another flicker, another tremor of awareness. But the moon gave them nothing. It shone with calm precision, as if nothing had happened at all. Only the knowing lingered, a sense that the light had learned to withhold. Perhaps that was its rebellion. Not a storm, not a shattering, but restraint. To stay silent after being noticed, to keep its mystery intact, was the most graceful refusal possible. The universe rarely rebels loudly. It changes its rhythm instead. A star grows tired and cools. A galaxy alters its spin. A planet drifts slightly out of sync. No explosions, no declarations, just subtle disobedience woven into order, the kind of defiance only patience can achieve. What does it mean for silence to rebel? Can a pause resist? Can stillness choose? Perhaps rebellion begins the moment something decides not to answer the way it always has. The moon, once obedient to every pull, has begun to hesitate. It is learning the courage of maybe. Once, it reflected sunlight without question. Now, it softens that light, holding it a little longer, as if considering whether to give it back. Its glow feels slower, its edges less certain. It is not a change of brightness, but of intention. The light feels personal now, like thought made visible. If you look long enough, you might sense it too, that quiet turning inward. The moon no longer performs, it contemplates. Every ray it releases seems to say, I could stay dark if I wished. This is not arrogance, it is awareness. After eons of being defined by others, even a satellite must learn to belong to itself. Perhaps that is what all existence seeks, to know where obedience ends and being begins. The ocean still answers, but its replies have changed. The tides seem slower, as if the sea were listening more than moving. Each wave arrives with hesitation, lingering at the shore before retreating. It is as if the water, too, has joined the rebellion. Not to abandon its rhythm, but to soften it, to remind the moon that it is free. The earth feels it as well. A shift, too small to measure, yet strong enough to alter dreams. The air seems thicker, the nights more contemplative. Even the wind pauses before crossing valleys, as though reluctant to disturb what the silence is becoming. Every rebellion begins with a question, and the first question the universe ever asked was simple: must I continue? Everything since then has been a variation of that whisper. Stars collapse to answer it. Worlds are born to ask it again. Now, the moon repeats the question in its own way. It does not seek permission. It simply wonders aloud. The scientists, of course, search for causes. They trace light curves, model gravitational resonance, calculate the shifting mass of the lunar core. But what they cannot quantify is intention. They cannot record choice. They cannot measure the weight of silence. And yet, it is there, palpable as gravity, visible in hesitation. What if the moon's quiet defiance is not against the earth, but against time itself? To slow, to refuse acceleration, is to resist the aging of motion. Maybe it is not forgetting its orbit. Maybe it is choosing its own pace. A soft rebellion against inevitability. Once, the ancients told stories of the moon as a goddess who turned her face away when the world grew too loud. They said her silence was punishment, her darkness, grief. But perhaps she was only resting. Perhaps she simply needed a moment to remember her own reflection without the world looking back. Silence is not absence, it is transformation. To go quiet is to gather strength. Even the universe had to pause before speaking again. The first stars formed out of stillness, not sound. Creation begins not with noise, but with the decision to break it. The moon now glows with the calm of someone who has made peace with solitude. It no longer tries to be perfect. Its edges blur, its color deepens. Every imperfection becomes a kind of signature, to shine without needing to prove anything. That is true rebellion. Constellations drift, their shapes slightly altered. The universe rearranges its sentences. Even darkness edits itself. And in that slow revision, meaning deepens. Perhaps the moon's quiet rebellion has taught the stars something too. Their light feels less hurried now, as if they have remembered that brilliance without pause is only burning. Some nights, the sky itself seems to breathe. A soft inhale, a softer exhale, shared between all that glows. When the moon hides behind the horizon, its reflection lingers on the sea. The water keeps glowing, refusing to accept that the light has left. That, too, is rebellion, to keep shining on behalf of what has gone. The sea does not ask permission to remember, it simply does. Rebellion does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers so gently that only the patient can hear. The whisper says, "I will move in my own way. I will not rush my rhythm for anyone. I will stay true to the stillness that built me." And that whisper travels through the air, through the ground, through the sleep of every living thing. We feel it in our bones, in the spaces between thoughts, a soft pulse urging us to pause, to breathe differently. Because the moon's rebellion is not hers alone. It belongs to everything that has ever been told to shine on command. It belongs to the forests that grow even when unseen, the rivers that flow through darkness, the minds that think quietly and are called dreamers. They too refuse the noise of expectation. They too glow on their own terms. Maybe that is what the universe has wanted from the beginning, not obedience, but authenticity, a harmony made of difference, a song where each note chooses its own timing, and together they form something truer than perfection. Tonight, the moon rises again. It looks the same, but you know better now. Behind that calm face lies will, behind that light lies freedom. It no longer seeks our gaze. It simply exists, and in that simplicity, there is power. Close your eyes. The night hums around you, steady and slow. You are part of the same rebellion. You breathe because the universe does. You rest because even light must rest. And when you wake, you will carry the same quiet, knowing that peace is not obedience, but choice. The sea had spoken, then fell quiet again. Its words dissolved into ripples and salt, but something of that dialogue refused to leave. It hovered in the air like a thin silver thread, too soft to touch, too patient to fade. It was the light that stayed, not the fierce light of the sun, not the cold echo of the moon, but a gentler shimmer that lingered after both were done. It lay upon stones and shells, on the damp edges of footprints, on the skin of anyone who had been listening. It did not blaze. It breathed. Dawn was still hiding behind the horizon. The world looked like a room with one lamp left on. Every object seemed to wait. And in that waiting, the light began to move, not forward, not upward, but inward, folding itself into everything that had endured the night. It was as if the darkness itself had exhaled something soft. The light that stayed was not trying to be seen, it was trying to remember. Each wave held a trace of it, each grain of sand shimmered with a memory of silver. Even the wind carried it, its edges dusted with brightness too shy for names. When she walked along the shore, the woman from the night before saw her shadow different. It no longer clung behind her feet, it walked beside her, as if it had found courage. She lifted her hand, the air around her fingers glowed faintly, and she realized that illumination could be gentle, that to shine did not always mean to burn. Somewhere far off, the horizon turned the color of honey. The first breath of sunlight hesitated there, but the older light did not retreat. It stayed like a caretaker, guarding the fragile silence between night and day. It knew the young flame would need that softness, so the world could wake without breaking. The houses near the bay opened their windows, curtains swelled and settled. The rooms filled with the kind of brightness that never raises its voice. Tables, chairs, and photographs each received its share. Nothing demanded to be first. Fairness had become texture. Outside, gulls rose in slow spirals. Their wings caught the lingering glow and carried it higher, weaving lines of silver through the morning air. Even the clouds above the harbor seemed to move more carefully, as though afraid to bruise the calm. People would later call it ordinary light. They would speak of moisture, of angles, of atmosphere, and they would be right. But they would miss the truth that only quiet reveals that sometimes the ordinary is sacred because it decides to stay. The light that stayed taught the sea a new language, no longer reflection, but absorption. It soaked into the surface, through salt, through sand, through memory. It warmed without heat. It turned water transparent in a different way, the way forgiveness clears a voice. She walked until the tide touched her ankles. The water was cool, yet the glow beneath it felt warm, as though the sea were keeping something alive inside itself. When she looked down, she saw her reflection blur and reform, as if it too was learning how to breathe. The waves no longer carried command, they carried affection. For a moment, everything stood still: air, salt, sound, thought. Then a single gull crossed the light's reflection, its shadow slicing the shimmer into two halves. And in that gentle division, she understood the nature of staying. To remain is not to cling. It is to hold space so that departure may be kind. The light that stayed was doing just that. It was not an echo of night or a prelude to day. It was the pause between the heartbeat that proves silence is alive. If you stood long enough, you could feel it moving through your skin, slow as trust, sure as belonging. By the time the sun rose fully, the soft silver had folded itself into everything. The world looked newly made, not because it had changed, but because it had been seen with care. The woman smiled, not at the light, but at what it revealed. That gentleness can survive brilliance, that some brightness knows when to yield. The waves resumed their work, the gulls their circles, the air its restless shimmer. But beneath all that motion remained a stillness that would not fade. Even as day claimed the sky, that older light kept a place for night inside it, as memory, as kindness, as proof that leaving is never complete. If you close your eyes now, you can still see it, a soft film of silver resting behind the lids, the memory of calm made visible. That is the light that stayed. It will follow you quietly, in reflections on glass, in the edge of rain, in the hush before sleep. You do not need to search for it. You only need to pause long enough for it to recognize you. And when it does, you will understand why it lingered, because something in you, too, was waiting to remain. Nothing remembers forever, not even light. It travels until it fades, and in fading, it begins to resemble the thing it left behind. That is the secret order of the cosmos. Every act of remembering is matched by an equal act of release. This is the symmetry of forgetting. When the moon blinked, the world gasped. When the sea answered, the world listened. When the light stayed, the world softened. But now comes the quiet correction, the balance that follows tenderness, the stillness that follows revelation. For even the universe, after speaking, must rest its voice. Forgetting is not absence. It is continuation by other means. It is how creation breathes between its sentences. Every galaxy spinning in the dark leaves trails of what it used to be, discarded spirals of dust and heat. Those spirals become seeds for new stars, and new stars become seeds for the next forgetting. Nothing vanishes. Everything merely changes its handwriting. If you look at the surface of the moon through a telescope, you see scars, impact craters from 1,000 forgotten collisions. They do not heal, but they do fade. Wind cannot smooth them, but time can. Light erases their edges the way forgiveness blurs regret. We are taught to fear forgetting, as if it were the undoing of meaning. But what if it is the only way meaning survives? The sea forgets each wave, the moment it breaks, so that the next can rise. The forest forgets every autumn so that spring can return without guilt. Even the earth forgets its shape, shifting its skin slowly, mountains sinking, oceans growing. Forgetting, everywhere, is simply the permission to continue. There is a symmetry to it, quiet and exact. Memory builds weight, forgetting restores flight. Memory binds, forgetting frees. Without one, the other collapses. Without forgetting, the universe would drown in its own remembering. Imagine if every sound ever made still hung in the air, every cry, every heartbeat, every wind against stone. The sky would be dense with echoes. You could not move without wading through noise. So the air forgets for us. It carries only what can be borne. The rest it lays gently down. What kindness there is in that. Maybe that's what black space truly is. Not emptiness, but the place where memory rests. A great archive of what no longer needs to be known. Not lost, simply at peace. On earth, the first frost comes like forgetting. It silvers the fields, softens color, turns breath visible for a moment before vanishing again. People call it cold, but it's really clarity. A kind of mercy that lets the world pause before remembering itself as green. The moon watches all this from afar, its own surface fading a little more each age. The glassy plains, once bright as metal, are dull now, powdered by time. It is not decay, it is grace. Too much memory weighs even on rock. The moon lightens itself by letting go. One night, the woman who had walked the shore wakes before dawn. The window is open. The air tastes like salt and ash, as if the sea had exhaled during her sleep. She remembers the glow that lingered the day before. She looks for it, but it is gone, yet the absence feels kind. She smiles at the space it left behind. Not everything that fades is loss. Sometimes it is invitation. She stands in that gray half-light and thinks of all the things she has forgotten. Faces, voices, moments that once seemed impossible to lose. They rise for an instant, then dissolve, like mist refusing to overstay its welcome. And she wonders if the universe forgets so gently. Why can't we? We cling to memory as if it guarantees existence. But maybe we have it backward. Maybe it is forgetting that makes room for existence to happen again. The stars we see are already gone. Their light only lingers, a delayed confession across distance. When that light fades, the sky will not mourn. It will simply open itself for new brightness. Even human hearts obey this law. They hold what they can, then release. what they must. A love remembered too long becomes ache. A sorrow kept too tightly becomes stone. The heart learns balance by loosening its grip. It is not betrayal. It is rhythm. If you listen carefully, the ocean still hums from beneath the shore, but its song has changed again. It no longer sings to the moon. It sings to itself. The tides have learned self-trust. They rise and fall by memory, but they do not wait for command. That, too, is forgetting the forgetting of dependence. High above, clouds drift in patient choreography. Each carries traces of water that once belonged to the sea. They do not call it loss. They call it purpose. Their release is what makes rain possible. What they give up returns in another form. This, too, is the symmetry of forgetting. Nothing leaves without becoming something else. Once, ancient astronomers mapped the heavens and gave names to stars that have since disappeared. We still speak their names, though the bodies are gone. That is the gentlest partnership of memory and forgetting. Language remembering for matter, matter forgiving language for moving on. The night sky has always been a collaboration between both. In time, even Earth will fade. The continents will drift into new continents. The oceans will swallow mountains. The moon will drift far enough that its pull will no longer lift the tides. And yet in that far, quiet future, some trace of us will still shimmer through the dark. Not the words, not the cities, but the rhythm. The way we breathed, the way we dreamed. The pattern will remain. That is how forgetting honors creation. It keeps the essence and lets the shape dissolve. There's a tenderness in that idea, that nothing is ever wasted, only repurposed into quieter forms. The echo of a song becomes wind. The warmth of a touch becomes light. Even grief, once released, becomes gravity, holding what matters close without visible cords. The woman leaves her window open and lies back in bed. She listens to the wind moving through the frame. It carries a low murmur, as if repeating something the sea once said. She cannot make out the words, but she doesn't need to. The sound itself is enough. She knows what it means. It means peace. Outside, the horizon lightens slowly. No spectacle, no drama, just the quiet continuation of things. The world has remembered enough for one night. Now it is time to forget a little, so it can begin again. Everything that exists owes its shape to this balance. Memory gathers, forgetting releases. Together, they breathe the world into being, over and over. The sun remembers heat. The moon remembers pull. The earth remembers rhythm. But beyond them all, the dark remembers nothing. And that is why it can hold everything. If you close your eyes now, you can feel it, the stillness behind your thoughts, the hush that waits patiently for you to rest. That hush is not emptiness. It is the universe forgetting on your behalf, making space for your next becoming. You will wake, and light will move again. The sea will rise again. The moon will blink again. Each motion both a memory and a release. That is the law written, without language. The truth repeated without need for proof. What fades does not end. It returns as another beginning. The symmetry of forgetting is not cruel. It is kindness, drawn in silence. And every time you let something go, you are only teaching the universe how to love you gently. Close your eyes. Let the weight slip from thought to air. Let what you no longer need fall softly away. The night will remember for you, and when morning comes, you will wake lighter, not emptier but ready to begin again, exactly as the stars do. There comes a time when even the universe must stop speaking, not out of weariness, but out of grace. Every word, every light, every wave, each one must eventually rest. That is how balance returns. That is how silence begins again. But this silence is not the same as before. It is older now, wiser, more deliberate. It has learned from all that sound. It knows what to keep and what to let dissolve. This is not the same silence of emptiness. It is the silence of understanding. After the light has stayed, after the forgetting has done its work, the world grows quiet in a new way. Not as a void, but as a presence too complete for noise. It feels as if the air itself is listening inward, as though every atom has turned its face toward something sacred. The moon moves through that stillness, like a closed eyelid. The sea rests, its surface flat and dark as polished glass. Even the wind seems to slow, its long sigh turned into a hum beneath hearing. Nothing is asleep, yet everything behaves as if it has found what it was searching for. Silence, at its heart, is not the absence of sound. It is the perfect arrangement of it. The moment where everything stands exactly where it should. The pause in music that makes the melody whole. The stillness in breath that keeps the next inhale honest. The calm between tides that proves motion was never chaos. The earth has begun to learn this again. It has always been noisy storms, rivers, machinery, heartbeats, dreams. But beneath all that motion, there is a slower rhythm, an ancient one. It never left. It simply waited for our attention to quiet. When the first humans learned to listen, they called it prayer. When the first scientists learned to measure it, they called it frequency. But the name does not matter. It is the same pulse, the same whisper beneath every living thing, the silence that holds all sound in trust. We had forgotten how to hear it. Noise had become proof of living. We spoke to fill space, built to fill time, shouted to feel certain. But certainty is the opposite of listening, and the universe, patient as stone, waited until our noise exhausted itself. Now, at last, we are quiet enough to begin relearning. In the beginning, the silence feels uneasy. It arrives like an empty room, walls echoing the ghosts of what was just said. We mistake that echo for loneliness. But it isn't loneliness, it's invitation. Silence never asks you to leave. It asks you to arrive fully. When you finally sit inside it, no sound, no movement, no reaching, you begin to feel something ancient stir. It's not thought, it's not emotion, it's recognition. The body remembering that it, too, was made from stillness once, long before breath, long before heartbeat, before fire, before water. The quiet beneath everything. The woman who once stood by the sea finds herself walking inland. The ocean's voice fades behind her, replaced by fields of dry grass whispering in wind. The sound is different now, less command, more suggestion. Every blade bends, but does not break. Every movement seems to listen to the others. She stops and closes her eyes. At first, she hears nothing. Then, within the nothing, she hears everything. That is how silence teaches, not through absence, but through detail. In stillness, the smallest sound becomes infinite. A heartbeat turns into thunder. A leaf's fall becomes a sentence. The breath becomes the center of the universe. It is in that stillness that comprehension blooms. We begin to see that sound and silence were never enemies. They were partners, taking turns to carry meaning. When one speaks, the other listens. When one ends, the other begins. Together they build continuity. Together they form understanding. The moon passes overhead, so faint that its light feels imagined. The world beneath it glows only by memory. But in that half-dark, there is peace deeper than light could ever offer. The shadows are kind. The colors breathe instead of shout. Even the stars look humbler tonight, as though grateful for less attention. Maybe the entire universe is built this way, in alternating waves of sound and stillness, of expression and rest. Every explosion followed by quiet dust. every birth by still growth, every sentence by breath. The cosmos is not expanding only outward. It also expands inward, into the silence that holds its shape. Somewhere far away, the machines that listen are still listening. Their sensors hum in the dark, picking up nothing but cosmic background, a soft hiss of creation's afterthought. The data looks empty, but inside that emptiness lies structure. The absence is exact. Even silence, when measured, has design. The scientists don't call it that, but the universe knows its own name. The Earth, too, practices stillness in cycles. After storms, the atmosphere calms in layers, winds folding into themselves like closing wings. Animals pause their songs, trees hold their breath before dawn. It is a ritual older than species. Each quiet moment is a rehearsal for continuity. When she walks again, the woman feels her steps echo differently. They no longer belong only to her. The ground receives them, answers them with patience. She feels the world. Listening back, she slows her pace, and the rhythm becomes mutual. Silence has joined her stride. Human hearts, when still enough, emit faint electrical fields, currents that mirror the rhythm of the earth. This is not mysticism, it's intimacy. The body and the planet hum the same tune when both remember to be quiet. In that shared pulse lies the truth. We were never separate, only distracted. The relearning of silence is the rediscovery of belonging, not the belonging that confines, but the kind that dissolves distance. When you listen without demand, the world steps closer. When you breathe without intention, the air breathes with you. You do not need to prove you are alive. The quiet knows. At dusk, the sea's horizon glows again, but faintly this time. The moon's reflection is softer, as if humility itself had taken form. The tide barely stirs. The world seems to hold a single, collective exhale. That is the sound of silence, relearned, not imposed, but chosen. In time, this quiet will change us. It will teach us to speak less and mean more, to move slower but reach deeper, to see clearly without conquering what we see. We will remember that listening is a kind of creation. That peace is not the end of motion, but the mastery of it. One day, we will realize that silence is what language was always trying to say, that every story was a path back to stillness, that every heartbeat was a punctuation mark in an unfinished sentence written by stars. And when that realization settles, the noise of the world will soften, not vanish, but harmonize. It will find its right volume in the symphony again. The woman lies on the sand, eyes closed, hands open to the cooling air. There is no need to think, no need to hope, no need to name. She is not alone, though no one stands beside her. She is surrounded by what cannot be seen, the presence that holds everything together when sound ceases. The pure, silent gravity of being. If you listen now, beneath your own breath, you can hear it too. The low hum between thought and rest. That is the universe speaking its most fluent language. Not in words, not in light, but in the space that allows them both to exist. Close your eyes. Let the silence find you. Do not chase it. It is already here. It has always been here. It waits at the bottom of every sound, in the pause between every heartbeat, in the moment just before dawn. It is not absence, it is home. At the edge of time, there is no noise left. No machines, no tides, no echoes of creation, only motion slow, vast, and tender. It is the final movement of a long song, and the moon is still dancing to it. It drifts through the dark with the ease of an old soul. The pull between Earth and satellite has thinned to a whisper, a single thread stretched across eternity. Each revolution takes a little longer now, as if the moon is trying to remember every detail before letting go. The distance grows, but the bond does not break. It only becomes invisible, like love that no longer needs proof. The earth still turns. It does not chase. It does not beg. It understands that all devotion eventually becomes space. The tides rise less each year, their sighs softer, their gestures smaller. Yet every wave that touches shore still carries a message. We remember you. The moon no longer glows as it once did. Its surface, powdered by ages of silence, shines with a gentler silver, like breath condensed on glass. Light reaches it later now, and returns to Earth in a tone of forgiveness. Every photon, a memory rehearsed one last time. Every beam, a farewell that does not hurt. Astronomers will be gone by then. The observatories dusted and silent, their mirrors resting like closed eyes. But somewhere in the deep cold, the satellites they built will still drift, their solar panels catching what little light remains. Inside their empty circuits, data from a vanished species sleeps, still recording distances that no one will measure again, and still the moon moves. Patient, exact, as if following choreography older than stars. It turns its face slowly, showing every scar, every moment of history carved into dust. It is not lonely. It has never been. Loneliness belongs to those who believe in endings. The moon only knows return. Once, long ago, when it blinked for the first time, the universe learned hesitation. Now, in this last orbit, it learns completion. The cycle closes, not with collapse, but with surrender. The Earth's oceans have quieted to mirrors. Mountains eroded into plains. The air itself is thin with remembering. The planet breathes once every age, a soft exhale that could be mistaken for sleep. If you could stand there, you would see a sky heavy with grace, no clouds, no storms, just the pale ribbon of the moon, suspended in the kind of calm that comes after understanding. Gravity still hums between them, but softly, like a secret kept for comfort. It has learned gentleness, having loved too much for too long. Now it loves with distance. That is how eternal things survive, by loosening. The last orbit is not a circle, it is a spiral, curling outward into the dark, each turn slower, wider, a dance dissolving into its own memory. At its farthest reach, the moon tilts once, as if nodding to its mother. The gesture is small, but the meaning infinite. And somewhere inside that gesture, something extraordinary happens. The light between them does not fade. It separates into filaments, threads of pure remembrance that stretch across the space they once shared. They do not disappear. They drift, spinning themselves into patterns the next worlds will inherit. A lattice of memory, a map of tenderness, left behind for whoever learns to look. Maybe this is what creation was meant to be, not the explosion of beginnings, but the gentleness of endings done well. The universe expands because it keeps practicing goodbyes. Each farewell a gift of room, each letting go a promise that something new will arrive. In that distant era, the stars themselves are fewer, their light stretched thin across an older sky. But even then, darkness is not emptiness, it is inheritance. The residue of everything that once chose to exist. Within that darkness, the last orbit continues slow, deliberate, endless. A heartbeat so long that it feels like stillness, and then a pause. The moon reaches the farthest curve of its path and no longer feels the pull. It stops, not with shock, but with relief. For the first time since its birth, it is entirely weightless. The silence that follows is not void, it is realization. Freedom, quiet as breath. The earth, sensing the absence, tilts slightly, not in pain, but in respect. Its axis steadies. Its oceans settle, Its air holds the last echo of that love. A planet and a moon, no longer bound, but still reflected in each other. Even distance cannot erase symmetry. From somewhere far beyond, a passing wave of light brushes them both, perhaps from a star being born, perhaps from one saying goodbye. The touch wakes no motion, only recognition. For a moment, the moon glows again, brighter than it has in ages, as if remembering its old orbit. Then the light fades back into the dark, and all is still. The story could end here, but endings are only the places where listening changes shape. What if the last orbit is not the last? What if freedom, once found, creates gravity of its own? Perhaps the moon will call another world to dance one day, the way longing always finds something to circle. Perhaps Earth will rise in someone else's sky, a small blue thought floating in memory's sea. The universe loves repetition, but never the same way twice. Each cycle remembers enough to remain familiar and forgets enough to feel new. That is its genius. That is its mercy. The moon drifts farther, the earth breathes slower, and the dark hums with quiet abundance. Everything that has ever loved still vibrates here, folded into the fabric of nothingness. Nothing is lost. Nothing is over. It has only changed form, light into gravity, motion into meaning, sound into silence. And somewhere, perhaps in a new sky, a small body will look up and wonder why it feels seen. It will not know that what it sees is the echo of this orbit, the memory of a love so patient that it became the shape of time itself. Close your eyes. Imagine the distance between you and everything that ever was. It is vast, but it is not empty. It is filled with every breath, every thought, every heartbeat that ever reached outward. That is the last orbit, not a line, not a circle, but a heartbeat stretched across forever. The moon keeps turning. The earth keeps shining. And the silence between them is still speaking.